We're gonna pause this for the benefit of all y'all who never saw Soul Food. Soul Food is a movie about a big, humongous black grandmother, aptly named Big Mama. Big Mama demonstrates her love by feeding herself and her offspring enormous amounts of pig lard. Then, get this, Big Mama's arteries are so clogged, they gotta amputate her arm.
It was her leg.
Right, okay, whatever, leg. Then, she dies of a heart attack. Or another stroke, or something.
God called her home.
And what does the family do after she dies? They get together for a Sunday dinner and eat the same food that just killed Big Mama. The same food! They didn't learn a lesson. Nobody went on a diet, and that's the end of the movie.
Paula Christensen Silva is a nurse practitioner at UT Health San Antonio's Wellness 360 clinic.
And I see over and over and over again that patients with diabetes, hypertension, obesity, you add more meds, more meds, more meds, more meds.
But too often, more meds didn't stop her patient's decline. So she and two colleagues started the Green Wellness Program, Plants to Plate, a 6-month program that helps people adopt a whole foods, plant-based diet.
Whole food plant-based means that we encourage people to move away from animal products and replacing those things with plant-based protein options.
Those who enroll become part of a group, and they meet weekly with that group.
It's really amazing how much support the group gives to each other.
And Christensen Silva says this program gets results across the board.
We see improvement in cholesterol. We see improvements in their inflammatory markers. We have definitely seen, for those with diabetes, a decrease in their hemoglobin A1C. My favorite thing to do, of course, is to decrease someone's diabetic medications for them.
Participants also lose weight, about 5% of their body weight on average. If you're interested in learning more about the program, go to Science and Medicine at tpr.org or Google Green Wellness Program, Plants to Plate. That's Science and Medicine from the UT Health Science Center, San Antonio, and Texas Public Radio.
I don't know how that will work. Again, certain occupations they talked about, and we even talked about that may not be, that may, I guess, escape AI. They talk about in-person jobs, fixing your cars, this, that, and the other. I assume air traffic controller, which we talk about a lot. You still need some people for that. But I did see, and I verified and checked this again, they need people at the National Archives to read cursive. So that is a skill that is going away. So if you live in D.C., you need to read cursive. There you go.
Now, coming back to the U.S., Joe Biden has left the Oval Office, as I'm sure you know, and left something for his successor, a personal letter, returning the gesture that Donald Trump made for him in 2021. Now, this is a bit of an inauguration day tradition among U.S. presidents. They exchange letters, handwritten letters, which are filled with some advice, some humor, and a lot of humanity after a heated election season. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you wrote a letter? Actually, when was the last time you wrote anything more than a few pointers? It's been a while, hasn't it? Because we live in a digital world with screens of all shapes and sizes. Miss a friend, send them a meme. Have a work update, text your colleagues. Want a grocery list, type it on the Notes app. Or wait, you could just tell Siri or Alexa. This is how we live today. Our phones, our computers, they are changing how we write, if we do it at all. And so, writing is dying. Does it matter? If you ask teachers, more and more of them may say no, it doesn't, because handwriting is increasingly disappearing in schools too. In the US, students are no longer required to learn cursive writing. Finland removed it from schools in 2016. Swiss schools have reduced its use. Many Indian states are doing away with cursive as well. Now, this is part of a growing norm. The world over, 1/3 of students cannot write legibly. So that day is not far when children will look at cursive and call it a primitive foreign language. It is quite sad, really. But before we grieve education standards, do know that school children are not the only ones in this club. It includes adults too. Most of us, in fact. Very few people are putting pen to paper. According to studies, 1 in 3 educated adults do not write anything by hand for about 6 months. And 2 in 3 struggle to read someone else's handwriting. And this is not just about reading doctors' prescriptions. This is the norm. You don't need data to see it. We have thousands of calendar apps today. Few of us have actual calendars. We don't beg celebrities for autographs anymore. We want selfies. We don't write letters anymore. We spam people with TikToks and Reels. And experts get it. In the real world, in this digital world, handwriting can seem quite useless, at least from a practical skill point of view. But they also warn us that this skill atrophy is harming us. In 2012, scientists held a study. They sat down a group of preschool children and they asked them to learn letters. And the children did this in 2 ways. First, by writing them out by hand, and second, by typing them on a keyboard. And later, the children were put under an MRI scanner. They were shown the various letters and their brains were mapped. Now, for those who practiced by hand, scans showed their brains light up. They were highly activated because they processed information deeply. On the other hand, the activation was much weaker for those who learned by typing because writing by hand has many benefits. It can stimulate visual recognition. It improves learning ability. It boosts retention. It improves memory in general. So the loss of writing by hand means the loss of cognitive skills and in many ways the loss of your being, of your personality. Scroll writings show us a painter's head full of ideas. Careful writings tell us about a monk's discipline because your handwriting is a marker of who you are. For thousands of years, handwritings have taught us about entire civilizations. They show us how humans made their thoughts visible to each other. They help us trace our history. They help us remember things about ourselves that we have long forgotten, like that birthday card from your loved one, that handwritten message from your favorite teacher, or that signed album you braved crowds for. So losing handwriting is a sign of our times, but to live without it is to lose some of our humanity.
That's why we have to think as black people. Stop singing and dancing and start thinking.
Wow.
Thinking and reading. I say reading is more important than watching TV. And not getting addicted to looking at those small iPhone screens. See, where you were getting accustomed to looking there in a narrow space as opposed to paying attention broadly to what is happening around you. See, and people are getting addicted.
Class time has become screen time in schools across the country. Use of tech in classes was already growing when it was accelerated by the COVID pandemic. Students were sent home and classrooms went online. WSJ education reporter Sarah Randazzo has been covering the rapid tech transformation playing out in American schools. She says the shift has happened with little debate, conflicting research, and high stakes for the nation's children. Sarah, can you put into context what the shift to more tech in schools looks like?
Yeah, so this has really been a years-long progression. You know, when you and I were in school, maybe we had a computer lab, maybe there were some computers in the classroom, but really most things were rooted in paper, pencil, maybe some smart boards, basic technology. These days, especially post-COVID, every student pretty much in America has their own device, whether it's a tablet or a Chromebook. Sometimes they take those back and forth with them. Sometimes they sit in the classroom and they have another set at home. But really, the shift has become that doing things on the screen is more of a default than the paper and pencil method we grew up with.
Do we know on average how much time students are spending on screens every day?
Yeah, so we had a company called Lightspeed Systems analyze tons of data that they have on the use of school-issued devices that students have. And so they found that the time spent on devices peaks at 2 hours and 24 minutes daily in sixth grade. And at first you might think, okay, 2.5 hours, the day is long, but that's about 35% of instructional time that we found. So really, about a third of a student's day in sixth grade is on a device. And it went up and down based on the grade, and it's showing more and more of the school day is being used on screens. Overall, in the Lightspeed analysis, they found that from grades 1 through 12, students are spending an average of 98 minutes on school-issued devices, and that's about 20% or more of the average instructional time in the school day.
How are teachers integrating technology into their classrooms and lessons other than, deep, obvious ways of having students submit their work on laptops?
Yeah, so I've been visiting a lot of classrooms this school year, and it's pretty remarkable the ways that technology can get woven into the day. I was in a high school Spanish class, for instance, where the entire day was guided by what was on the screen. And so basically teachers create oftentimes essentially a PowerPoint slide where they go from one thing to the next guided by the tech. And so one slide will say, okay, we're going to do a vocab quiz. And so the students will do a quiz. The next slide will say, okay, now everyone type in Spanish what you did this summer, and then it'll get shared with everyone else in the class. And then the next slide will be a video that they pull up showing Spanish being spoken in another country to give a world view. And then the next thing they switch to will be a game that the students then play. And so there's really just a zillion apps that teachers are sorting through these days, for better or worse. Some are getting a little overwhelmed, but they can incorporate it in everything from writing exercises to tests to giving essay feedback to doing group work. Really almost every part of the school day you could imagine could have a tech component.
And there are many stakeholders in this conversation, but I want to hone in on 3 of them: teachers, parents, students, one by one. Let's start with teachers. What have they said about the use of screens in schools?
Teachers are definitely mixed. They're the ones who are bearing the brunt of figuring out how to incorporate the technology. They do get some guidance from on high, but really it's each teacher in their classroom trying to figure it out. And so for some, they say it's really revolutionized things because they can bring students into other worlds in ways that they couldn't before. They can literally have students diving around on a map and just learning more about other things that just weren't as possible in a textbook, and can do really creative things. Students can be more visual, create a video instead of writing an essay, that kind of thing. But at the same time, teachers say managing all this is difficult. As you and I know, when you have something in front of you, you're looking at it, you're texting, you're trying to sneak in, checking your email, playing a game. It's the same with students. When they have the Chromebooks up, they can just go on the internet. And so it's essentially this constant ebb and flow of managing the students getting too distracted with it and then trying to utilize it for the good and creative uses that are possible with it.
And what have parents said?
Yeah, parents are also, like everything, a bit mixed. We spoke to some parents who were really pushing back and trying to opt their students out of tech altogether or get their districts to change policies. So one woman I spoke to really worked closely with her district in Oregon and presented a plan to them and said, here's some things we could do to scale back. They took some suggestions, didn't take others. Overall, we've seen some surveys where parents say they're okay with the use of tech, but then also have issues with the amount of screen time. In one survey, for instance, that we looked at, about 3 in 4 parents said that computer use was having a positive effect on their child's learning. But in another survey, 40% of parents said kids spend too much time on screens. So again, they're seeing some benefits, but then just cumulatively, it's suddenly like, whoa, this is now a lot of screen time happening.
How about the students? What have they said about the use of screens?
Yeah, so we spoke to students across the country in different places, and some of them said, this is getting to be a little too much. I get fatigue. I get headaches from looking at the screen so much. My eyes get tired. I'd rather just take notes with paper. Others told us, hey, it's easier to turn in assignments. It's easier to keep track of homework. We're on technology all the time anyway, so it makes sense that it's being used in schools.
Sarah, what does the research say on the use of screens in classrooms?
Yeah, there's not a ton out there right now that shows technology boosts kids' education. The research is pretty mixed and I'd say remains unsettled. For instance, one review we looked at of 24 studies looked at whether college students retain more information when they take notes by hand versus on a computer, and they found that the note-taking by hand won out. That's one very specific use of tech versus paper. The companies selling these products, there's zillions of them, they often put out research that they say shows, oh, use our product and your kids will score this much better on tests. But when we dive into that research, a lot of it is a little shaky and a lot of it is sponsored by the companies putting it out. So it's a little biased in that sense that a company is commissioning its own research to try to prove its product works. And so a lot of the research is that just because, academic researchers have a lot to focus on and they just haven't done as much on this as the companies themselves.
Where have screens in classrooms been the most helpful?
There's a lot of places where they're helpful, certainly, especially in lower income districts. Schools are saying that these are really a great equalizer. Families who couldn't afford to buy devices on their own now really are benefiting from money that schools have to give devices to students. And so in that sense, it's really helped pretty much every student in America have access to technology, whereas maybe before it would have leaned more toward higher socioeconomic classes.
That was WSJ education reporter Sarah Rendazzo.
This time I'm walking to New Orleans. I'm walking to New Orleans. I'm gonna need to parachute when I get through walking these blues. When I get back to New Orleans, I've got my suitcase in my hand.
New Orleans is gearing up for the Super Bowl, and as part of efforts to tidy up the city, Governor Landry announced his administration will begin clearing homeless encampments downtown, moving some unhoused residents to a warehouse in Gentilly and others out of state. Sophie Kasakov has been covering this story for the Times-Picayune, The Advocate, and joins us now for more. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Sophie, can you share some more of the details behind this plan? How does the administration plan to relocate the unhoused residents, and roughly how many people are they hoping to transport?
So the relocations began on Wednesday. This was after months of tension between local and state officials over the city's efforts to house people who are living on New Orleans streets. The governor became increasingly frustrated with the pace of the city's work on this issue as the Super Bowl approaches, as tourists are expected to come into the area. So this plan was announced by Governor Jeff Landry to relocate people living in encampments throughout New Orleans downtown, French Quarter, Business District, and more. And on Wednesday, the plan was put into effect. State police came through encampments and relocated people to a warehouse, a temporary shelter on the edge of Gentilly by the Industrial Canal.
What do we know about the warehouse in Gentilly? How many people can it safely accommodate? And will the people there be given any food or basic necessities?
So the plan is for the warehouse to accommodate up to 200 people. And the plan in place is for people to receive food and different services at the warehouse. State officials have promised that there will be case management, mental health resources, medical resources provided to people there. There have been some concerns from advocates just within the last couple of days about conditions at the site. Councilmember Leslie Harris visited the site and shared that on the first day at the site, it was very cold. I heard that from people who had been relocated there as well. Councilmember Harris said that she, didn't see that the services that had been promised were in effect yet on Wednesday. In response to those concerns, state officials and the shelter director said, we're getting things going, we're addressing these problems, all of the promised services will be provided.
Roughly how much money is this going to cost? What's in the budget?
So it's around $11 billion at least, and potentially $16 billion, depending on the length of time that the shelter is operated for, either 2 or 3 months. And this number has been a source of a lot of pushback from critics of the plan, from housing advocates, who have noted that that amount of money, billions of dollars, could be used instead for permanent housing. It's far more money than is used annually to operate New Orleans' regular low-barrier homeless shelter. So this sort of issue around money and whether this is the best use of the resources has come up a lot in the last couple of days.
What's the response been from those who work more directly with the unhoused community, from those who have been working to get these people into more permanent housing?
So I think people who work with unhoused people are hoping for the best at this point. The shelter is operating, and I think people are hoping that these conditions issues and services issues are resolved now that the shelter is in effect. I think that people, do recognize that there's a need for getting people out of the cold that's upcoming. There has been concern raised by advocates in the last couple of days, in addition to some of the questions around services, about people having access to their belongings. There was some confusion as people were relocated about how to pack up and where people's belongings would be held. So I think there's overall, a hope that at this point, some of these issues can be addressed in the coming days and continue to be addressed as long as the shelter is operating.
Sophie Kasakov is a reporter for the Times-Picayune, The Advocate. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
LA County officials are tackling some serious housing issues caused in the wake of the devastating wildfires.
The LA County Board of Supervisors voting on new eviction protections and rental rules. KTLA's Chris Wolf live in downtown LA with more on the vote and other issues discussed at today's meeting. Chris?
Yeah, good evening, Micah and Cher and everybody. As you said, county leaders tackled a number of issues at their regular meeting today, and it wasn't always quiet. Take a look. Activists with tenants unions erupt in chant during a meeting of the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors this Tuesday afternoon. They're concerned about evictions and were demanding freezes on rent. County supervisors walked out at one point. Price gouging has been a constant concern in the wake of the devastating wildfires at the beginning of January. The Los Angeles County District Attorney talked to reporters last week about criminal landlords hiking rental prices, in some cases up to 300%, taking advantage of displaced families desperate for housing. Local and county officials are warning predatory landlords they will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law if they do not refund any overcharges to victims immediately.
Supervisor Barger.
Aye. Tuesday, supervisors voted unanimously to pass special safety provisions and relief measures in the rental market. They want to ensure that tenants can welcome family members or friends in need, along with any pets they may have. County leaders are also easing restrictions on short-term rentals to provide more temporary housing for fire victims.
If you need to bring in family or friends who are displaced, you should be allowed to do that.
As well as pets. I mean, we find that in this situation, it's an all hands on deck. And I know one of my family members opened up part of their home to people that were displaced up in Altadena. So we have to make sure that we are as flexible as possible, recognizing that these people are desperate, and many of them do have animals, and that should not preclude them from being able to stay with a loved one that may have a rule against no pets.
Those people that were safely housed that seemed secure last week, 2 weeks ago, are suddenly insecure today.
Hardships continue for so many people. Reporting live in downtown Los Angeles, Chris Wolf, KTLA 5 News.
All right, Chris, thank you.
Strong winds are in the forecast for Southern California this week, and firefighters put out several small fires yesterday and today. So far, nothing like the giant blazes that forced tens of thousands to evacuate 2 weeks ago. Many are still displaced from their homes in L.A., but a few people have been sticking it out in the disaster zones. Katie Riddle reports.
A lot of this neighborhood in Altadena is charred black, blocks of it. But this street looks mostly okay from the outside. Rob Caves and his fiancée have been staying here at their house. Many of the homes around them are still standing but empty. Caves looks out from his doorway. He's holding a clipboard.
So this is my neighborhood watch list. I've got the name and the address and the status.
Status, which houses have pets in them, which need to be checked on, the ones that are gone altogether. Caves leans in his doorway as he reads the list. In some cases, they've had to inform their neighbors that they lost everything.
That was a super hard text or phone conversation to have because, I try to be as emotionally present for them as I can be, but there's how do you say that to someone?
Caves and his fiancée, Ralph Mendoza, did initially evacuate in the middle of the night.
Inside the house, smoke. Outside the house, smoke. Explosions everywhere. It's just panic everywhere.
A few hours later, they decided to chance it and return. Soon after, the National Guard closed off access to the neighborhood. They've been here ever since. Now, the city is easing the evacuation orders. But even if people want to return, many houses are still just not livable. They do have some utilities. The internet and power is intermittent, but it's not comfortable and possibly not safe.
We're not even using the water to even shower because we're afraid that there might be still some chemicals.
They've got each other as well. More than one person here reports being alone in their house. Earlier on this day, a friend brought Mendoza and Caves a bag of hamburgers. Now they're giving them out to the few neighbors who are around.
We got you in and out.
Michael Russell is one of these folks.
Thank you so much.
We got you.
That's awesome.
Russell lives across the street. His backyard is a tiny utopia, preserved, with a lemon and an orange tree, a stunning mountain view. He gestures to a ladder in the middle of the yard. This is where he watched the fire progress toward his house.
And then got up on it. You can see the burn side, the mountainside there. And then it was crazy. Winds were going like 50
Last year, Russell took some steps to mitigate risk, removing flammable material from around the house, putting a fire-resistant mesh inside the vents and the roof. There were some things he didn't anticipate, like ash.
I really realized how many carcinogens are in it and how dangerous it could potentially be. It's really freaking me out. I mean, you come inside my house, come on.
Inside, the house is covered in an almost invisible layer of black soot. The day before, Russell says he set an open cup of milk on the counter. When he was making coffee, he left for a half hour.
Where there'd be a milk line here, it was black.
A black line of ash covered the top of the milk. He's afraid to clean anything for fear he'll stir up dangerous chemicals.
So that's in the carpet. It's in the bedding. I can't deep clean all this stuff to get this stuff out.
He plans to stick around, but he says he has no idea how to figure out what is toxic and how to make his house safe. Authorities are starting to give guidance on this. His neighborhood's emptiness is eerie.
So it's kind of living in a kind of a death zone in some ways. And I went out the other day, and as we're going through some neighborhoods in my truck, the cadaver dogs are out there.
On the metric of misery, Michael Russell counts himself lucky. He has a house. It is still standing. But the flip side of his good luck is all the uncertainty of what happens next. Katie Riddle, NPR News, Altadena.
The man, race, class, genre, and the dilemmas of black manhood.
Something unusual is happening in a Georgia courtroom today. A former county prosecutor goes on trial. She's charged with interfering with the police investigation of Ahmaud Arbery's murder. He was the black jogger chased and killed by 3 white men in 2020. No arrests were made until months later and only after video of the crime came out. NPR's Debbie Elliott reports.
It's been nearly 5 years since Ahmaud Arbery was shot to death in Satilla Shores, a subdivision on the Georgia coast near Brunswick.
911 was the address of emergency.
I'm out here at Satilla Shores. There's a black male running down the street.
Neighbors Greg McMichael, his son Travis, and William Roddy Bryan mistakenly assumed Arbery was a thief.
Stop right there! Is it? Stop!
They cornered him with pickup trucks before Travis McMichael killed him with 3 shotgun blasts. The men are all serving life prison sentences for murder and hate crimes. Now another piece of this high-profile racial justice case is coming to court after years of legal delays. Former Glenn County District Attorney Jackie Johnson is charged with violating her oath of office and hindering a police officer. State prosecutors say she sought to shield the McMichaels from arrest. Greg McMichael had previously worked as an investigator in her office and was a former police officer. Arbery's family is ready to see this corruption case come to trial.
To get 100% justice for Ahmaud.
That's his father, Marcus Arbery. He says holding the former prosecutor accountable is no less important than convicting the murderers, because elected officials are supposed to serve everyone equally.
Because these are people we put our lives in hand, that's supposed to serve all people equal in justice. It was just hurtful. To get in these powerful spots like that and don't do their job, it's hurtful.
Johnson, who is white, had served as the Glenn County DA for 10 years. She has denied interfering and said she immediately recused herself from the Arbery case. Her lawyer declined NPR's request for an interview, but in May of 2020, she spoke on WIFO radio on the local Butch and Bob show. They asked her about allegations she advised the police not to arrest the McMichaels.
That's so far from the truth. It's just a straight-up lie.
Some of the evidence state prosecutors are expected to present at her trial include logs of some 16 calls between phones belonging to Greg McMichael and Johnson in the days and weeks after Arbery was killed. There's also this message left on her cell phone shortly after the shooting.
Jackie, this is Greg. Can you call me as soon as you possibly can? My friend and I have been involved in a shooting, and I need some advice right away. If you can please call me.
Community activists have been critical of how Glenn County officials originally handled the case. Arbery was shot to death on February 23rd, but nothing happened until graphic cell phone video of the killing, recorded by Brian, was leaked on May 5th. The video sparked public outrage, and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation took over the case from Glenn County Police. Under mounting pressure, the McMichaels and Brian were arrested not long after. In Brunswick, the nearly 3-month delay in seeking justice for Arbery sparked a grassroots movement to transform the community. Elijah Bobby Henderson is co-founder of A Better Glenn, a civic engagement coalition founded after Arbery's murder.
We understood that bringing light to his case was not enough.
The group set out to drive up voter turnout and work to make sure that Jackie Johnson was defeated in her re-election as DA. But Henderson says they have bigger goals that will take time.
We want better systems. We want better outcomes. Make improvements to the systems that it failed on that day and that have historically failed in Glenn County.
Henderson says he's hopeful the evidence in this trial can shed light on the local power structure.
I call it a cabal. We know that there's handshake deals and backroom conversations that happen, but that was bad, right? If a Sunday jogger can have his life snuffed out and they are intent to cover it up, you know, we are returning to the place where people are lynched without justice.
Arbery's murder was among those that sparked a national racial justice outcry in 2020. Barbara Arnwine of the Transformative Justice Coalition says if the allegations against the former DA are proven in court, it will underscore inequities in the criminal justice system.
These vigilantes that took justice into their own hands, bad enough, but to have the assistance after the fact of a prosecutor is very distressing.
Arnwine says the trial is an opportunity for transparency about what exactly happened in those first few weeks when the family feared there would be no justice for their son's killing.
It was very tough, you know, those weeks that the family didn't see an active investigation, but were being told that the best was being done when it wasn't.
The Georgia Attorney General's office will be prosecuting the Johnson case, with jury selection set to start today. Debbie Elliott, NPR News, Brunswick, Georgia.
If the present era is a reflection of white supremacy domination, and therefore non-white inferiorization, meaning non-white people having been shaped and molded into functional inferiors, who believe they are functional inferiors. See, I should walk out there to Stanford, walk on my hands and knees out there to Shockley and say, Professor Shockley, you not only have said that we are genetically inferior to you, but guess what? We believe it ourselves.
Part of what President Biden said last week in his farewell address when warning about the dangers of what he called the tech industrial complex.
We see the same dangers of the concentration of technology, power, and wealth. You know, his farewell address, President Eisenhower spoke of the dangers of the military-industrial complex. He warned us then about, and I quote, the potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power, end of quote. 6 decades later, I'm equally concerned about the potential rise of a tech industrial complex that could pose real dangers for our country as well.
For more on the growing alignment between Trump and Silicon Valley, we're joined from San Francisco by Becca Lewis. She's a postdoctoral scholar at Stanford University. Her research focuses on right-wing influence in Silicon Valley. Becca, welcome to Democracy Now! You just finished your PhD on this very subject. I think decades ago, people were associating Silicon Valley and big tech with certainly not the right and the far right. Can you talk about the change?
Yeah, that's right. Thank you so much for having me. What I found in my research is that even though it hasn't been part of our public understanding of Silicon Valley, there actually has been a really important right-wing strain in Silicon Valley for decades at this point. And a lot of what we're seeing right now is that coming to fruition, really reaching an apex rather than emerging out of nowhere.
And talk about those forces in the 1970s, 80s, 90s.
Yeah, so at that time, there was a lot of right-wing backlash against the gains of particularly feminism and fear around the breakdown of the nuclear family, or at least the perceived breakdown of the nuclear family. And there was a loose network of right-wing thinkers, writers, public intellectuals who came to see Silicon Valley as a space to restore the role of masculinity in the American economy through this ideal of entrepreneurship. And they really promoted entrepreneurs as preternaturally gifted men who should not be held to society's other standards, rules, or regulations. And this was at a time when women and people of color were entering, universities and institutions of higher learning at higher rates than ever before. And these groups of social reactionary men were promoting the idea that entrepreneurship could do away with all of that. You wouldn't need education anymore because the entrepreneurs would be the ones to save us.
There is a leader in this movement.
But Becca, also this whole issue of the Silicon Valley folks, for the most part, were not as involved in national politics until recent years. Does their shift to some degree reflect the fact that the Biden administration began to become more assertive in anti-monopoly and antitrust efforts against Silicon Valley?
Yes, absolutely. there certainly have been these reactionary strains within Silicon Valley, but you also have seen that, the Obama administration, for example, was very, very welcoming to Silicon Valley and fostering it. And so you saw a lot of folks within Silicon Valley working, really happily with the Obama administration. And I think that's partly where we started to get this public perception that Silicon Valley was actually left-wing, when in fact a lot of what was happening was just symbiosis and Silicon Valley being able to do what they wanted. Once they started facing pushback, there was a reaction against these more progressive forces and or regulatory forces at the very least. And now you see a wholehearted embrace of Trump with the hopes of deregulation.
Also, President Trump announced yesterday a $500 billion joint venture known as Stargate between OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle in order to invest in an artificial intelligence power infrastructure. Could you talk about that and Trump's efforts to rescind Biden's executive order on AI?
Yes, this was a really big statement that the Trump administration would be friendly, would be deregulatory, would do everything to help out the tech titans who are promoting AI above all else. This is where we could see really the coziness emerging, even more than all of the tech titans in the front row at the inauguration. And it's really telling that one of the tech titans who is working with Trump in this effort is Larry Ellison, who's been one of the biggest right-wing forces in Silicon Valley since the 1980s, and also who has been a longtime Trump loyalist.
Becca Lewis, Google, Meta, Apple all face antitrust lawsuits. Musk companies are under a number of investigations, reviews by federal agencies. As Trump's second term begins, does he have leverage over these influential tech leaders, or are they completely running the show? And the significance of not only, the head of Meta, Zuckerberg, and of course Elon Musk, right? They're all ahead of the cabinet members or the proposed cabinet members at the inauguration. But the CEO of TikTok was there as well.
Yes, absolutely. Trump has leverage over them, and they have leverage over him. I think you're seeing a symbiotic relationship, but one in which they realize that there's power that each can gain from the other. For Trump, he really benefits from getting to attach his name to what seems like the forward-thinking, next wave, innovative elements of Silicon Valley, whereas the tech titans themselves know that he actually holds the power around regulation and government intervention. And so you really are seeing them cozy up to each other in a way that is driven both by aligned interests, but also by mutual fear.
Becca Lewis, I want to thank you for being with us. Postdoctoral scholar at Stanford University, just finished her PhD, her current research focusing on right-wing influence in Silicon Valley. Thanks also to Robert Weissman of Public Citizen and Brendan Fisher of Documented. Brendan will also link to your new article in Rolling Stone, Blame the Supreme Court for Elon Musk's Power in Trump's Administration.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear who are not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Say that again.
Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
The Trump administration has nixed DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion programs across federal government.
These programs were part of a civil rights movement stretching back decades, but the president has called these efforts, quote, dangerous, demeaning, or immoral, unquote. And he's also targeting efforts to investigate extremism in the military's ranks.
NPR's Pentagon correspondent Tom Bowman joins us now to discuss. So, Tom, first off, just start off with the Defense Department's DEI programs. What are they?
Well, these programs have been seen as pretty effective in bringing more women and minorities into the ranks at all levels. President Biden chose the first woman, Admiral Lisa Franchetti, to run the Navy, as well as the first black defense secretary, Lloyd Austin. But Donald Trump and his defense secretary nominee, Pete Hegseth, have dismissed these programs as woke and divisive. Another thing they question is extremist activity. My colleague Lauren Hodges and I talked about all this in our recent podcast, A Good Guy. It focused on an active duty Marine Sergeant Josh Abate, who was in the Capitol on January 6 and pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor. Abate told the court in a written statement that he was wrong about the election being stolen. And by the way, a Marine panel voted to keep him in, and he's still on active duty.
Now, so what does that say then about understanding extremism in the military?
Well, first of all, it's important to note that about 1 in 5 of those who were arrested for January 6 activities had military backgrounds, nearly all veterans. Now, Pentagon officials have long insisted that they don't have an extremism problem, that the numbers are small, but, you know, they really don't know because they've never collected data. And the services just within the last several months said they would collect such data, and they outlined prohibitive behavior, such as joining militia groups, raising money for them, or attending rallies for extremist groups.
So all this now brings us to Pete Hegseth. That's President Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense. What has he said about all this?
Well, he has been very outspoken, not only about his opposition to DEI programs, but also efforts to better understand whether the Pentagon and the military services have an extremism problem. Here he is at his confirmation hearing when he was asked about that by Republican Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota. Let's listen.
Things like focusing on extremism, Senator, have created a climate inside our ranks that feel political when it hasn't ever been political. Those are the types of things that are going to change.
Now, officials who worked on these anti-extremist efforts say, no, it's not political. It's not what politician you support or even ideas you might have. It's all about action. Again, like joining the militia groups, taking part in racist or anti-government rallies, but clearly all these efforts to collect data on extremism will end.
All right, so Hegseth will get rid of DEI programs, those extremist fact-finding programs. What else do we expect from him should the Senate confirm him?
Well, we could see him making some personnel changes, maybe removing military leaders he believes got the job not based on merit, but because of their gender or race. There is concern with people I talk with in the Pentagon, in the Officer Corps. At this point, we'll just have to wait and see.
All right, that's NPR's Tom Bowman. Tom, thanks a lot.
You're welcome.
You know, and I'll never get after one of my championships. Frank says, hey, Russ, after the season's over, why don't you come down and spend a week with me down in Kentucky? I said, Frank, you're a good guy. There's no way in hell I'm going to go spend a week in Kentucky.
Community members all across the tri-state say they woke up to some hateful flyers scattered throughout their communities. And once again, recruitment letters for the KKK have been found in the greater Cincinnati area. Brady Williams has been looking into this all evening. So who's doing it?
Well, that's what they're trying to find out. This is reportedly the Ku Klux Klan for the regional area. Unfortunately, this is not the first time this has happened in the tri-state. Police departments on both sides of the Ohio River right now are asking for information about who might actually be spreading these. Both authorities and people we spoke to in neighborhoods where these were found couldn't help but worry about the fact that they were spread on Martin Luther King Jr. Day.
It's like very startling to see.
This person, who wants to remain anonymous, says they woke up Monday morning to a flyer outside their door in Clifton. Hate speech in bold letters and contact information for the alleged regional Ku Klux Klan.
What's your primary concern when you see something like this all of a sudden? That people are going to start getting hurt, you know. It might just start like people getting yelled at in the street, then someone's going to get like attacked, and heaven forbid someone might, you know, lose their life.
We've seen at least 3 different flyers, all of which are asking for recruits. One advertises a mass KKK event in February, while another attacks Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. A third urges all immigrants to leave the country and says there will be a mass deportation event on January 20th.
The people who are leaving these behind are definitely a threat.
We tried contacting the phone numbers listed for Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana to try to gather more information about the people leaving the flyers. They only go to voicemail asking for money. The Ohio voicemail contains the following.
In January, the world's going to change for a lot of people, especially the immigrants in Springfield, Ohio. But nothing's going to change for the Ku Klux Klan.
Cincinnati police say they're aware of this and they're investigating. Police in Ludlow, Kentucky put out a statement that they don't condone flyers they've seen, which they call, quote, hateful garbage. They say they've already taken a report for harassment and plan to seek criminal charges if the parties involved are identified. The city of Fort Wright has also released a statement that there have been flyers found and they won't tolerate any intimidation. Bellevue police say they're investigating as well, but the criminal charges at this point are only littering and illegal posting of signage.
And I guess the only thing I really can say right now is just keep your eyes open and stay safe.
So if you feel you're being threatened or harassed by something like this, file a police report. They're all encouraging that. If you have any information about who might be leaving these flyers in neighborhoods, all of these police departments are asking you to reach out and let them know right away.
I turned the ISO up on my camera, and I have this dark photo of this flag waving, and smoke is, tear gas is coming down, and there's hardly any more people up the top. It just was weirdly over. You know, I walked 2 blocks, called an Uber. I just remember looking at who my driver was going to be, and I was so relieved that this driver was a black man. Because I really, honestly couldn't deal with any more white folks that day. I couldn't. I was just over it.
In one of his first official acts, President Trump fulfilled a promise that defined his campaign, granting clemency to all of the more than 1,500 people charged in connection with the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol.
These are the hostages, approximately 1,500 for a pardon. Yes. Full pardon.
The action included pardons for nonviolent offenders along with those who assaulted police officers. Trump also commuted the sentences of 14 others, all of whom are linked to the Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, both far-right extremist groups. For more, NPR Justice correspondent Carrie Johnson is here, along with NPR investigative correspondent Tom Dreisbach. Good to have you both with us.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Carrie, let's start with you. This was a massive criminal investigation, more than 1,500 cases, which Trump just ended. What happens now?
Already, we're seeing people being released from prisons and jails, including Enrique Tarrio. He's the former chairman of the far-right Proud Boys group, and he had been serving a prison term of 22 years. He's now free, according to his lawyer, Naib Hassan.
I can tell you Enrique is looking forward to moving forward with his life and being a productive member of society.
Several other members of the Proud Boys also won pardons, and some had their sentences commuted.
Explain the difference between these pardons and commutations.
The vast majority of people won full and complete pardons, meaning not only are they released from prison, but they get certain rights back, like voting or owning a firearm. Trump commuted or shortened the sentences of 14 other people, including Stewart Rhodes. He's the founder of the far-right Oath Keepers group. Rhodes was convicted of seditious conspiracy and sentenced to 18 years in prison. The judge said he was an ongoing threat to this country and the very fabric of our democracy. Stewart Rhodes was released early this morning. He's been spotted outside the D.C. jail this afternoon, waiting for the release of other defendants.
Tom, there had been a sense that Trump might pardon only the nonviolent defendants. Vice President J.D. Vance actually said, obviously, in his words, people who assaulted police should not be pardoned. But Trump pardoned with a broad brush. Remind people about the violence that day.
Yeah, rioters brought a lot of weapons: pepper spray, bear spray, metal poles, bats, stolen police batons. Several actually had loaded handguns, though thankfully they did not shoot anyone. More than 140 police officers were injured, and in one of the most severe assaults that's really stuck with me, a rioter took a stun gun and drove it into the neck of police officer Michael Fanone. He then suffered a heart attack. He was worried he was going to be killed. Multiple officers have described being crushed, feeling choked by the pepper spray, thinking they are about to die. And some rioters celebrated the violence, like Ryan Nichols. He wore a bulletproof vest on January 6th. He was armed with a crowbar. He pleaded guilty to spraying police officers in the face with pepper spray. And on the night of January 6th, so after the riot, he recorded himself calling for a second American Revolution.
So if you want to know where Ryan Nichols stands for violence. Ryan Nichols is done allowing his country to be stolen. And I understand that the first Revolutionary War, folks, it was violent. Well, guess what? This second Revolutionary War right now, the American Revolutionary War that's going on right now, it started today. It's going to be violent.
That was Ryan Nichols on January 6th. He was sentenced later to 5 years in prison, and now he is among those violent defendants who received a full and unconditional pardon.
Carrie, given how much the Justice Department under Merrick Garland had pushed for these prosecutions, how are those prosecutors feeling now?
It's the U.S. Attorney's Office here in D.C. that handled most of those cases, and I reached out today to Matt Graves, who led that office under President Biden. Graves says most of these defendants had already pleaded guilty and served their time, so the pardons actually benefit the most violent criminals, the ones who got the most punishment. Graves rejected the idea that this whole effort, which was really the biggest investigation in Justice Department history, that the effort came to nothing. He says there's a robust public record, more than 250 trials, exhibits, guilty pleas, and he says those can't be wiped away. And as for releasing so many people who committed serious crimes, here's what Graves had to say.
So as a prosecutor, we always have concerns about individuals when they're released going out and committing similar crimes to the crimes they committed in the past. Obviously, those concerns are heightened if there's a perception that their conduct has been approved by the state.
Tom, you've been talking to police officers who were assaulted on January 6th and family members. What have you heard?
Well, the words I've been hearing are betrayal. Shocked but not surprised was what former Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Ganell told me. He was repeatedly assaulted on January 6th, had to have 2 surgeries actually because of the injuries he sustained. He still has PTSD. And he was set to go to court actually for the sentencing of another rioter who was convicted of assaulting him. But then after the pardons, he got the call. That's off. As a crime victim, all day he's been getting notifications from the Bureau of Prisons that other people who assaulted him are being released. He said he basically does not understand how Trump and his supporters can claim they back the blue, support law enforcement, while also issuing these pardons. And he's concerned about his and his family's safety, still dealing with threats for speaking out about January 6th.
The very same people who claim to support the police are the one making harassment calls, threatening on social media, all because we did our job.
So, Tom, what is next for some of these riot defendants?
Well, keep in mind, most people, like Carrie mentioned, already served their sentences. The median sentence was less than a year. Many people got no jail time at all. So it's really the people convicted of the most serious crimes, seditious conspiracy, violent felonies. They're getting the most relief here. For people convicted of felonies, a pardon means they get their gun rights back, for one thing. The rioter, actually widely described as the QAnon shaman, he stormed the Capitol while wearing the furs and wearing horns. People might remember him. He actually posted on social media that he was going to go out and buy some guns now that he's been pardoned.
And Carrie, in many cases, a pardon represents the end of the story. But I understand that might not be the case here. You have some new information on that?
I talked a short while ago with Larry Krasner, the district attorney in Philadelphia. He's been doing some research about these January 6 defendants, including the former president of the Proud Boys chapter in Philadelphia. Krasner says Trump's pardons and clemencies apply only to federal crimes, not to state charges, and there may have been crimes committed in Philadelphia by some of the most violent and serious offenders. There are going to be challenges here to bringing state cases, things like double jeopardy and what actually happened in Pennsylvania versus what happened in D.C., like these steps to plan an alleged conspiracy. But the bottom line is some district attorneys and state attorneys general may be looking to make new cases against some of these January 6 defendants, and they may be the front line to policing political violence in the coming years.
That's NPR's Carrie Johnson and Tom Dreisbach. Thank you both.
Thanks, Ari.
Thank you.
Oh, the white woman got a big heart. Lord, she's got a big heart.
On the first full day of their administration, President Trump and Vice President Vance attended a prayer service at the National Cathedral. Last night, right out of the gate, Trump issued broad pardons and commutations for defendants who attacked the Capitol on January 6th of 2021, including those convicted of attacking law enforcement. When asked why, Trump said without evidence that the FBI played a role in instigating the attack.
There were outside agitators involved. And obviously the FBI was involved.
I can assure you that these individuals will go on to commit acts of violence, maybe even commit acts of violence against me or members of my family.
Well, a Mercer County mother of 8 is among the January 6th protesters pardoned by President Trump.
Today, Rachel Powell was released from a Washington, D.C. correctional facility after serving 1 year of a 5-year sentence. KDK lead investigator Andy Sheehan has followed this case since her arrest 4 years ago and has the latest on her first taste of freedom.
After 3 years house arrest and more than a year in prison, Rachel Powell is now a free woman under President Trump's sweeping pardon of most every January 6 defendant. The Mercer County mother of 8 telling a crush of reporters she owes the new president a debt of gratitude.
He's a bigger blessing to me than he could ever imagine. He's brought my family back together, and I'm indebted. Just thank you, President Trump.
On that day 4 years ago, she became known as the Pink Hat Lady, one of several using this makeshift battering ram to break a window at the Capitol. Others called her the Bullhorn Lady, who gave instructions to rioters inside.
You can drop down into a room underneath it.
Federal prosecutors said she used a pickaxe to break another window inside and directed rioters to take the building. But today, sporting a pink Trump inaugural baseball cap, she said she was only looking forward to getting back to being a mom.
I promised my 8-year-old little girl that I would get her a pony.
Nice.
And some relatives are like, Mom, why'd you promise her a pony? Why wouldn't I promise her a pony?
Arrested back in February 2021, she was initially released from the Butler County Prison, but the court gave custody of her 8 children to her estranged husband and then confined her to house arrest in Sandy Lake, Mercer County, where she waited for 3 years for her trial. Convicted of 3 felonies and 6 misdemeanors, she was sentenced to nearly 5 years in prison. She spent a year in federal prison in West Virginia and was awaiting resentencing in Washington, D.C. when Trump pardoned her and the others last night.
Thank God for sparing his life, because I really believe that God did spare Trump's life, because we do need to make America great again.
But her incarceration did lead to some reflection. Powell says she does regret the violence of that day, saying she wished it had been a peaceful protest, but doesn't absolve herself for her part in it.
I feel like a fool because I just walked into something unexpected, and it doesn't excuse my behavior that day. I can't go back. I guess I can only go forward. So let's just go forward in our country and heal.
Now, Rachel Powell did become nationally famous as the Pink Hat Lady, directing rioters on that infamous day, but today she told reporters she's just looking forward to living a quiet life back in Mercer County with her children. Andy Sheehan, KDKA TV News.
The Turner Diaries. It sold over 500,000 copies. Who do you think is buying it? Eric Rudolph, the Olympic bomber, Wei Page, who shut up the Sikh temple, Larry Ford, developing typhoid and cholera, William Carr with the cyanide bomb, anthrax, ricin, botulism, C4, IEDs. I could go on like this for hours, and all of them are white supremacists.
Big news as we see a change in power, a flurry of pardons issued by President Trump. One big name, and you see him right there on your screen. He's getting a plane ticket out of Texas. He is the ex-leader of the far-right Proud Boys. That is him, caught by CBS News cameras, leaving Dallas Love Field Airport. He is bound for home in Miami, and that's where we find CBS News correspondent Jason Allen, who spoke with Tarrio. Jason, you talked to him. What did he have to say?
Yeah, well, the reason, Reed, that he is one of the big names is because he is someone who received one of the longest, if not the longest, sentences out of everybody who was prosecuted for their activities on that day. The leader of the Proud Boys at the time, more than a 20-year sentence, even though he was not present for those activities in Washington, D.C. because of a previous arrest. He'd been ordered out of the area, but prosecutors said that he was directing activities, maybe even inflaming activities. He told me today that he wasn't at all surprised to receive the pardon from the president. He called the president a man of his word. He believed that he would follow through on a promise. When I asked him further about maybe the breadth of these pardons, right, to not only include people who were prosecuted for being there and walking into the Capitol, but also accused of violent crimes, he didn't necessarily deny at all that people committed some of these actions they were accused of, and he said they've been held accountable rather, and I think we'll hear from him now. He really had a problem with the process that happened in the courts after that.
I think the miscarriage of justice that happened in these cases, regardless if somebody agrees with putting their hands on a police officer or whatnot, how the process worked out was unfair. You know, if you want to have a fair trial, take it outside of D.C. D.C. voted 93% for Biden. So they needed a fair trial. So if we would have gotten a fair trial, I think I wouldn't be in a position where I needed a pardon.
Yeah, as to how this pardon changes things for him, for the others who were prosecuted for activities that day, he said he really thinks the conversation re-changed back on November 5th when President Trump was elected back into office.
And we also understand that President Trump had a conversation with Tarrio's mother. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, there have been these discussions that have gone on, right? And the president has talked a lot with family members of people who have been involved in these pardons. You know, we know that his family has pushed very hard for him to be released, to be included in these releases. And what we're not so clear on is what happens from here. You know, Tarrio, when we asked him about his association with the Proud Boys, said that we should stop referring to him as the ex-leader. And when another one of our CBS station photographers was here, asked him, do you have any message to people that have, you know, been with you or following you through this process? He responded with just fight, 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 fight. So we'll see where it goes from here and expect him to possibly make some more comments about this whole situation when he arrives back with family today in Miami.
Well, and to your point, we understand we have some sound that we can roll right now when you asked him about his association, either past, present, or future with the Proud Boys. Let's listen.
What's your association at this point with Proud Boys? We've made the decision 4 years ago not to tell the media what our structure is, but I'd suggest that the media should stop calling me ex-Proud Boy leader.
So you are still a leader?
That's all. That's the only comment. That's the only comment I'm going to give you.
He says it there.
Yeah, so you hear there, he doesn't want to. Yeah.
No more X.
He doesn't want to go and exactly clarify X or if he is still the leader. But yeah, he doesn't want to be called X. As to what maybe the others in the organization say, we'll see.
All right, CBS News correspondent Jason Ellen at Dallas Love Field Airport. Thank you so much.
A far-right group's founder was spotted in the Capitol after the president commuted his sentence, and now a federal judge is barring a number of people involved from the January 6 riots from even visiting D.C. Caroline Shively has the latest.
A federal judge says 8 of the January 6 defendants who had their sentences commuted by President Trump this week are barred from entering the Capitol and D.C. area without permission from the court. Friday's order comes 2 days after Oath Keepers founder Stewart Rhodes spent several hours at the Capitol complex, hanging out at a Dunkin' Donuts and meeting with some lawmakers. Rhodes was convicted of seditious conspiracy and sentenced to 18 years before his commutation.
Please tell your story elsewhere. Here is disrespectful. Yes, of course. And I'm here to conduct business too. So.
The order only affects 8 of the 14 people who received commutations, meaning they were let out of prison for time served, but can still have restrictions placed on them. The 1,500 other people who received pardons can still go to the Capitol. That includes former Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio, who said on Friday he may sue over his conviction.
We are currently assessing our options on not only who to sue, because there's a lot of people to sue, take civil litigations.
Before the judge's ruling, President Trump was asked on Thursday if he would invite January 6 defendants to the White House.
They were treated very badly. Nobody's been treated like that. So I'd be open to it, certainly.
Mr. Trump has said he would still consider full pardons for those 14 whose sentences he commuted. In Washington, D.C., Caroline Shively, Fox 13 News.
And then I got into Memphis.
Tennessee.
All right, so this, of course, happening in a cafeteria. Our understanding is that there were other students around that witnessed that. And we're going to try and kill that audio there, but just a glimpse into what students may have heard or potentially seen today at Antioch High School when 2 students were shot.
We are now going to check in. You see on the left side of your screen our Steve Mailing, who is there at the staging area, and it appears that you have a parent. Steve, tell us who you're talking to.
That's correct. I'm here with Teresa Rito. She has a child inside of Antioch High School, and I was just talking to her a bit about this whole situation. Can you kind of let me know when you first heard about what had happened and how you learned of it?
So I worked from home, and I had picked up my phone and was just scrolling Facebook. And I had a friend that has a child here, and she commented they were shooting at Antioch High School, and she can't get into contact with her child. And I immediately clicked off Facebook and dialed FaceTime and called my son, and he answered the phone. He was in a classroom. I said, "Are you okay? Do you know what's going on?" I said, "I heard there was a shooting." He said, "That's what they're saying." I said, "Did you hear anything?" He said, "I didn't hear anything." But I'm on FaceTime, so I can see students behind him and talking, and I heard a girl say, "Oh, they have his arm wrapped up. He's bleeding. He's bleeding." And so I just talked to my son, asked him, "Are you scared? Just stay in the classroom. Don't get up." And then I called his dad to let him know what was going on. And then my phone just started blowing up. All my friends, all my family calling to make sure, because they know I have a child here, to just make sure he's okay. And so I let them know he's fine. And I never got a call from Antioch or any text message from Antioch High School. And so I was pretty sure it was on lockdown, so I didn't get up immediately. But then we got a text message, a mass text message went out saying that you could reunify with your child at this location. So I just got in my car and drove up here. I called my son back again just to make sure. They had moved all the students to the gym. And he's saying, like, I just talked to him a few minutes ago, he's saying he has to wait for the order, whatever order they're doing, get in to bring them down here on the buses.
One thing I wanted to ask you, of course, we're trying to get this answer from parents who we've spoken with. Do you know if there are any weapons detection systems inside of Antioch High School?
Not to my knowledge, there's not. I actually brought my son missed the bus this morning, so I had to bring him to school this morning. I have to, when you bring them late, you have to buzz in and sign them in. So I was able to buzz and get them signed in and told them, "I love you, have a good day." And I walked out the building and went on about my days. But no, to my knowledge, there's no metal detectors, no wands, anything. And I was just on the phone with one of my friends. She has a child at a middle school, and she just said that they put metal detectors and wands at her child's middle school. She's like, "I don't understand why they didn't start with the high schools." Exactly. Like, after this, every metro high school, at least starting with the high schools, because that's where it's more problematic at, they need metal detectors.
I wanted to go back to what you said, dropping off your son, saying "I love you." Is that something that kind of went back into your mind? Yeah,
I do it every day. I have 3 children. My other 2 are in private school, and I made a mistake in pulling him out of private school and putting him in public school. But this is his senior year. I won't be doing this again, and the other 2 will stay in private school. But I say it every day to all 3 of my kids: "I love you. Have a good day."
Teresa.
I'm sad for whoever is trying to contact their child who said, "I love you, have a good day," and their child is not answering the phone. It's unbelievable.
Teresa, I appreciate your time. I'm glad your son is okay, and hopefully you guys can be reunited as well soon.
Thank you.
So as she mentioned here, not sure of any weapons detection systems inside the school. This is obviously going to be a topic of discussion for the likely coming days, guys, but for now, I'll send it back to you.
I mean, we've already heard multiple parents in live interviews just within the last hour echoing those same concerns. saying that they feel that their school needs more security, whether that be metal detectors or other ways to make sure that students are safe. If you're just joining us, we have an update to this shooting at Antioch High School. We've learned one person is dead and 2 other people are hurt. They're being treated at Vanderbilt Medical University Center and Vanderbilt Children's Hospital.
Our Jeremy Finley obviously has been following this, and you have another angle on this. Tell us what you are learning. He's joining us in the studio now this afternoon.
The first thing I want to talk about is technology in the school. So here's what we do know. We know that as of last year, Metro schools had implemented a system where we're talking about a new system where ultimately this is telling parents when a gun is found in a school. They are using AI technology, and that AI technology is supposed to alert the school when a gun is seen on cameras. But I want to start off by getting back to the very beginning of this about the history of the district and with this school. So this is unfortunately a school that is familiar with gun violence. Let's start with the timeline here, okay? On October 16th, 2024, an Antioch High School student was arrested, accused of bringing a gun to school. Police say they found a loaded handgun in the boy's pants when he arrived at school that day. Resource officers were tipped off that the boy brought a gun to school the day before and were waiting to search him when he arrived at school the morning. The gun was not reported as stolen, and the student told police it did not belong to him. He was charged in juvenile court with possession of carrying a gun on school property. Again, that was October of 2021. The very next month, November 19th, 2024, someone made a false threat against Antioch High School. Someone threatened to carry out a school shooting on that day, again, November of 2024.
We're going to listen right now. We have another live interview for you.
You know, remind her about our therapy exercises of just breathing through it, and it's hard. It's so sad to see these kids go through this, and you know, somebody's child is not coming home today, and I just cannot imagine that. My God.
And for your family, you've already kind of been through, your children have been through this, and did you ever expect it to happen at like a safe space like this?
Never. I never expected it to happen where it happened the first time, and I definitely didn't expect it to happen here. And you know, like now my son is saying, Mom, I don't even want to graduate. I don't want to go through this no more. I just now got them to really start going back out in the public. And then this happens. Like, I just don't know how we're going to get past this.
How is your son?
He's not doing well mentally right now at all. He just keeps asking, where's my sister? Where's my sister? I'm like, Tosh, she's okay. We just have to wait. We just have to wait for her to get off the bus. But she's constantly texting me. She's letting me know every update. This is just unreal.
Hearing from more parents here just in disbelief. Others still waiting to hear from their child. All right, we're going to go live now to Brendan Terrily, who is talking to a student. Brendan, tell us who you're talking to and what he witnessed. What can he tell us?
Hey, Amanda and Holly. Yeah, we're getting set up out here right now to talk with Ahmad. You're actually the son of the woman that we had interviewed earlier who was so frantically trying to just make sure she was able to find her son and make sure she was okay. You were actually at the school, right kind of near the cafeteria when that shooting happened. Can you talk me through what kind of all you heard and saw?
Yeah, we was in the cafeteria just getting lunch like every other day. And the shooter started, we kept hearing like gunfire in the front of the cafeteria. Then people looked around screaming, and we ran behind the garbage cans. And then we saw people getting shot on the ground, bleeding and stuff. And I saw me and my friends and everybody in the back, we all ran on the side door, crouching down. And I tried to help these people who was falling on the ground, getting pushed. And so I was running while doing that, and then we ran out to school in the back of the school near the football field.
When you hear those gunshots go off and then you see your fellow classmates injured in a shooting like this, what's going through your mind?
I wish I could save them. I feel like a lot of pain and grief and depression, knowing that I can't do anything to help them. Just seeing them just get shot in front of my face like that.
Your mom had told us that she was able to get in touch with you, that you called her almost as soon as it happened. Talk me through that conversation and what that was like, letting your mom know that you were okay.
So when I ran out to school, I was calling her, telling her everything that happened, step by step. And so I was telling her, like, hey, Mom, this is a school shooting. Can you get here as fast as you can? And she said, what happened? And I was explaining it to her that there's a school shooter active right now shooting people. I don't know if he's still alive, if he's dead right now, but he's still at the school. And I told her I walked away as far as I can, away from the school. And so I called my dad, and I called my female friend, and she was still in the school. And I was trying to tell her, like, find a way for her to get out safe. And I was checking on everybody to see if they're okay.
Metro Police are telling us that the shooter took their own life, and one of your other classmates that were shot in this is killed. When you kind of hear that news, how heartbreaking is that for you?
It's really heartbreaking because it's like just seeing someone you know just die like in front of your face like that at any time is kind of really upsetting. And just seeing that you can't really save the person or help them, but you just seeing someone just take their life like that in front of your face, it's kind of heartbreaking.
Obviously, there's school resource officers at all the Metro high schools. Can you talk me through the other different safety measures that you get to go through every day here at the school to try to prevent something like this from happening?
So today, they said it was really cold. They should have canceled school. I don't know why. But we used to have metal detectors, and they stopped it just like a week later. I don't know why. They do searches, but that's not enough constantly. Because there's so many people who sneak weed or guns, and they don't do it. They just expel them. They don't press charges or anything about that. That's all I've heard. But I feel like they should be more strict.
Would you ever think something like this would happen at your school?
Yeah. The school have a lot of problems, and I feel like if something like this was supposed to happen, I just didn't know when. Ever since on the first day I got to the school, I felt like it was going to become a problem. As many fights it was, and the guns, people been caught with guns in their backpacks, and I feel like it was going to happen one day.
Sense. Thank you so much for joining us and talking us through this. I'm so sorry you had to witness that and go through all this today, but I'm so glad you're kind of being able to be reunited with your mom out here after such a tragic situation. We'll let you get home. We'll let you go get safe. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. Could I ask you a question real fast, actually, if we could? What was it like when you were able to finally get back in touch with your son and give him a hug out here after he got off that bus?
Oh, the bus situation and trying to... That's kind of unorganized because everybody's waiting for their child, and you have to have these lists, and that could have moved a little quicker, especially when you just wanted to take your child home and make sure they're safe in your arms. That's another struggle. So, but you know, this has never happened to him. Like he said, there's always fights and guns in the backpack, but nothing past that. And I hope, and it's sad that it had to come to this, that now, you know, they'll get metal detectors or more police officers in the schools. You know, you see them on Murfreesboro Road, but, you know, let's get them in the schools. Yeah.
What's that feeling now, that knowing he's officially finally safe and you're able to take him home?
Oh, yes. Just want to lock him up. Like I said, it's my only one, and want to lock them up. And I don't know, like, going from now, what is the school's plan? What is Metro's plan, especially for this school? Because, like I said, they have had issues constantly calling. The school is on lockdown, this and this and that. Okay, what's the action plan now? Because it's serious. You know, students have lost their life. It could have been worse than what it was. But we need to do something about that.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. We're so glad that your family is safe in such a tragic day out here in Antioch.
Cool. Right now, we're going to go live to our Jordan James, who is talking to a student. Tell us who you're talking with this afternoon.
Well, good evening, Holly. Some of those students just got off the bus, and right now I'm joined with a freshman here at Antioch, Serenity. So, Serenity, just kind of take me back to this morning and what this entire process has been like for you.
Well, it was scary because our teacher wasn't here and we had a sub, so she didn't know what to do. She didn't lock the classroom door. It was teachers. They was trying to help, but they really couldn't. And the students, it was like being loud, not taking it serious. So I was scared. And then I heard the shots. I didn't know what to do. So I just called my mom. I really don't know what to really say because I didn't think I'll ever like be in this situation before. but I've always been scared to like be in a school building and they start shooting or something like that. I've always been scared of that. So having it happen, it was just like I couldn't really believe it, but it was like, I don't know. I really don't know what to say.
And to find out that 2 of your peers died in this shooting, has that resonated with you just yet?
Yeah, because you really can't trust no one for real. And it's the fact that he had the gun in the school building. It just makes me feel like, I don't know, I can't really trust anyone. So it's like, I'm just scared. I really don't know.
And, you know, speaking of being scared, I mean, how do you feel returning to this Antioch at some point in time?
I'm going to feel a little uneasy, probably a little nervous, but I'm going to try to push through the day. But I don't know. I really don't know.
And finally, talk about being able to embrace your mother after hours of being on the phone with her and to stand with her here right now. How does this feel to you?
It feels good because the students that got shot or died, they're not able to do that, and their parents are also grieving right now. So it's like the fact I'm able to be with my mom right now makes me feel happy and safe because not other people can, you know, do that right now. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Serenity. And Holly and Amanda, that's the sentiment out here. A lot of students and parents are feeling grateful to embrace their loved ones after the tragedy that occurred here at Antioch High School. I'll send it back to you in studio.
So many questions, too, when you hear her saying that the substitute wasn't really sure what to do in those moments. So a lot of questions that we've got to get answered in the coming days here.
Yeah, and it's the second time we've heard that about a substitute teacher not knowing exactly what to do.
So there are more than 2,000 kids that go to this school. It is majority minority, something upwards of 82% minority, 41 different languages spoken at this school. So you think about even the dissemination of information that has to take place in a situation like this, and it can't all and only go out in English. You have 41 different languages spoken at this school, and there has to be information shared with each of them.
Majority minority. Gusty Renegade. It's Saturday night. I'm black and I'm dangerous. Context of White Supremacy. In for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Information for non-white people, victims of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, January 25, 2025. So I have been told. Our weekly compensatory call-in, hopefully to share constructive information, things that happened over the last 7 days, new presidential administration, really what you heard at the end right there, the Antioch High School shooting that took place in Nashville, Tennessee. You might even say, that sounds so familiar. Yes. Yes, it should. 2023, I believe that was February. The Covenant High School shooting was also in Nashville. Not even that. They counted the number of days between those two incidents on that live report. But this program, Compensatory Call-In, really all counter-racist work, a fundamental critical component is the use of words, precise use of words, and really a constant evaluation and mindfulness about the words that we use, words that are used around us, the semantic environment, if you will. For terms like that, majority, minority are rampant, and they keep the system of white supremacy, racism going strong. One of the main ways is keeping confusion amongst non-white people, because it was so much easier to just say, oh wow, this shooting took place at a high school, Antioch High School, that is 82% non-white. Oh, wow. Wow. Now, like, oh, okay. Wow, there's the majority, minority. What? Confusion. The number to dial, 605-313-5164. the code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. The number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Make sure I say it now so that I don't forget. For people who do not follow the book club, maybe haven't heard before, we're reading Dr. Maya Angelou's memoir, her fourth memoir in a series of 7, which is staggering. But she did live a long time, and she met a lot of really amazing folks along the way, including Buddy, the black male rapist. Anyway, in her memoir, her one-time husband, McKay, black male, privileged, tells her, with me, he's not just a black male, he's an African male. He tells her that with me, every day is Saturday night. I'm black and I'm dangerous. Now, he doesn't explain what all that means, the significance of Saturday night and why he is dangerous, and even, what do you mean exactly you are black? What is that? None of that goes into detail. I guess if I got to explain, you were already in trouble. Anyway, so I've been saying that for a couple of weeks now. Amazing memoir. I put that phrase into the AI image generator on the platform formerly known as Twitter, Mr. Elon Musk. Exactly the way it is in the book. It's Saturday night. I'm black and I'm dangerous. That's the exact way. And I didn't add anything else, no details. I didn't say this is from Dr. Maya Angelou's book, nothing like that. I put it in exactly like that, and let's see what it gives me. It gives you like 4 options to pick from. Now, one of the images was not very good, I thought, because it was really, really dark. I mean, I guess if you say Saturday night, it's not going to give you, high noon and bright sun. But it was so dark, you really couldn't even see the person that was there. And maybe that's a part of the danger. But so that one I kind of discarded. And then I think there were at least 2 that it was really dark. Like you could do a lot of different settings at nighttime where it's still, there is some light at least on the people that are present. But at least 2 of the photos, they were too dark for even that. They had another photo that just looked like a group of people standing in a circle, kind of. And it did look like there might have been one dangerous Negro male in the center, and then some other people around. And then they had one other image. It was still dark. It was nighttime, but you could at least see the faces. It was a group, maybe even a gang, of privileged black males standing together, looking serious. That's the one that I posted, and I even noted, like, they didn't have no image of a group of females looking tough, like Megan Thee Stallion, giving us a real tough mean mug, or nothing. They didn't have no male and female like Jay-Z and Beyonce looking tough. Like, we against racism. Nothing. It was Negro males. And when I posted this image, some of the folks even noted, like, dang, they don't have like a weapon or a box cutter or a ghost gun or a screwdriver or nothing. Toothbrush, nothing. Just my Negro maleness is danger enough. Which is what McKay said. He didn't say, I'm black and armed and kung fu master and jiu-jitsu and I done studied MMA, and he said nothing. He just said I'm black and I'm dangerous. And that's what Grok gave us. So, any hoodles. That notwithstanding, we will be here on Tuesday. White guests only. Pretty well timed, I would say. Particularly, yes, once we get to the book and such and all of, oh yes. In fact, some of these programs that there was a delay, some of it is because just it took a while to kind of gather from getting back from California, and still getting information, still doing research, really, in California, still getting information, and more to come. And really, I think if we were in a system of justice, I probably would have taken a vacation after coming back from California, because that was a stressful experience. Whew, to be gone for so long. But counter-racist grind continues, and we will be here on Tuesday. White guests only. Normal time, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Invest if you think the C.O.W.S is constructive, listener-supported, counter-racist radio. Hit the blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com. racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button is in the top right corner. Beneath the button, you'll see the links for Cash App, Venmo, and PayPal. Enormous thanks to all of the investors who have supported for 16 years. Now, the main point is we have failed. The goal is not to see how long we can broadcast. The goal is replace white supremacy with justice immediately. So if we could have done that in 10 years, then shame on us for wasting 6 years. Be that as it may, we have been at it for 16 years. Much obliged for folks who have invested. Hopefully we have been worthy of your time and energy. The Amazon wish list also linked right there on the blog, listed under Gus T. Renegade. Me and Jeff Bezos are super grateful for all of the listeners who have nabbed an item or 8 over the many years of broadcasting. I can say one specifically, my French press. Now, I've gotten lots of goodies like a computer. I don't think the French press is, the most expensive item by far. I think most hobos could probably go out and do a little bit of begging in probably one day and get a French press, a fancy one even. Anyway, you can use it to make coffee. I got mine to make yerba mate tea, which I love. Wow, you can brew a mean batch of yerba mate tea in a French press. Wow, I was so impressed, pun intended, and on the first brew, like no learning curve, no nothing. Like once I really get codified with how I want my tea from the press, and I didn't even consider myself a tea connoisseur, but I love me some yerba mate tea. Just, wow, it's got lots of any of it, depending on how you brew it, but generally it has lots of caffeine in it and all the rest of it. Love it. Get focused and get cracking. I'm so looking forward to codifying my tea brewing skills. Much obliged for the folks who've nabbed items from the wish list, like the French press. Now, getting to items from the current week, some of the things that we heard in the news reports. I guess I'll start with that school piece at the end there, the minority school. I was watching that live. Now, we spent all that time talking about Columbine and all the different school shootings that have happened over the years, and lots of constructive information. Michael Scholes, who lives in Tennessee, and this happened 2 days removed, not from the inauguration, which is true, but 2 days removed from Dr. King's federal holiday on January 20th, because he was assassinated. Where? In Tennessee. And I am not geographically ignorant of the volunteer state. Yes, I played Dr. King going into Memphis. This shooting happened in Nashville. Those are 2 different cities, but they are both in Tennessee. Now, I was watching that live, which I think that might have been the first time that I was watching a school shooting as it happened, kind of unfolding. I think we talked about this when we read Studying Columbine. I was not watching all that when Columbine happened. That was not the case with Sandy Hook, nor was I concerned about school shootings at that point. Parkland, ditto. I just can't think of any. Even the Covenant shooting that happened in Tennessee in 2023. I was not watching all that unfold live time as it happened. With this one, then, I don't even know why. I had been watching other things, paying attention to other things, talking about the wildfire and lots of other things. For whatever reason, I clicked on, it's Tennessee, you know, I haven't been in Tennessee in like forever. For whatever reason, I click on it, boop. Oh, it's school shooting, Columbine. I click and I start watching. Way before, I think I had been watching, I looked at the timestamp today as I was getting that clip together. I'm watching that live time. So if you go back, and you can go on YouTube and watch the full video of that clip that I played, it's about 4 hours of them just going and talking to people and all that. It was at about the 1 hour, 38-minute mark where the reporter says, a reporter who I think is non-white, says that Antioch High School is majority minority. I knew that because I had watched, as I said, this is at the 1 hour, 38-minute mark. I had watched approximately, about 90 minutes, almost 100 minutes, almost 100 minutes worth of footage that was almost, I just told you, the reporter, I think, the reporter who said that, majority minority, was a non-white, non-black person, I think, racially ambiguous. But most of the reporters, not all, would be classified as non-white, and a lot of them would be classified as black. And then most of the people that they talked to, I think almost every parent that they talked to was classified as non-white, I think, and no confusion, no racial ambiguity. I think almost every parent they talked to that I saw would be classified as non-white except for one. And then no exception, every student that I saw them talk to, every student that you heard and matter of fact, for you all, you didn't get to see everything. For what you heard, every voice that you heard in terms of the victims, parents, students, all of those were black people. I've never seen a school shooting that took place in the U.S. that looked like that, where all of the people that they talked to were black and or non-white. Most of them black, though. It was really like, wow, this is kind of, wow. So I'm just sitting here kind of, watching and paying attention. Then they said the shooter is black. Whoa. I'm even more taken aback. Solomon Henderson, they released the name later on. They hadn't released the name at that time, but they have now. Solomon Henderson is the name of the alleged gunman in this case, and he is reported to have taken his own life at the time of the shooting. Again, this is a 17-year-old black male. 17-year-old black male. This is from ABC News. It reads, and it's titled, Nashville School Shooting Suspect Posted Photos on Social Media Just Before Opening Fire. I'm skipping down. It reads, it appears Henderson had two documents on non-traditional websites, one 51 pages in length, the other 288 pages, police said. The 51-page document expressed violent white supremacist beliefs, sources told ABC News. Again, this is a black male. They got a picture up. If this is the dude, no ambiguity. He would, if I had to pick somebody in terms of skin complexion, he looks like he would be darker than Michelle Obama. I'm going to read that part again. 51-page document expressed violent white supremacist beliefs, sources told ABC News. He expressed self-hatred as a black person, and he wrote of wishing violence on other black people. And then he committed a school shooting at a school that is majority minority, 82% non-white. What's the way? I wonder if they put this on DraftKings. What's the wager Mr. Henderson posted, mentioned Reb Vodka Columbine? I put $1,000 down. And particularly, they said 288 pages. I'd put $2,000 down. Columbine, Reb especially white supremacy, and I don't like niggers, and we could go up, and it might even be one, bet the farm metaphor. This victim mentioned those cowardly white Colorado killers if he was into any of this at all. Might have to contact Mr. Scholes. Did you know? And get that 288 pages. What's there? He also expressed violent hatred towards Jews, whatever that means. Sammy Davis Jr. rolling over in his grave, and used anti-Semitic tropes and conspiracy theories to express his views according to sources. Henderson appeared to support neo-Nazi, accelerationist, and violent incel beliefs, and expressed a desire to see genocide committed against racial and religious minorities according to sources. I'm going to stop there. What in the world? Now, I can't say I haven't seen this before, because the shooting at Virginia Tech, what I just say, the worthless Negro from Virginia, shooter at Virginia Tech was a non-white male, and it was the same thing. He was sitting up adoration. I just love me some Dill and Reb and all the rest of it, self-hate, all the rest of it, and then went out and shot up a whole lot of people. Now, I don't remember him having self-hatred specifically about non-white people, but although that would be Elliot Rodger. Now, I have seen this before. That's him exactly. They sit out and lie and say you did, oh, he hated women and all that. Most of the people that he killed were dudes. He started by killing non-white males. I think, in fact, most of the people Elliot Rodger killed in 2014 California were non-white males. This is a non-white male with a white parent, white dad who worked on Hunger Games. What is that movie about? If you boil it down to a sentence, Gus T say, killing children, which is what he did. Anyway, but I have seen this before. This can be one of the results of that self-hatred, and he did, allegedly, he took his own life. But I was, wow. So all of this, I didn't even know this last part at the time that I'm watching all this happen on Wednesday, because they didn't share all this information. Maybe they didn't know immediately. I'm just watching like, wow, it is a lot of black people, and standing out in the cold for people that are, you know, in parts of the South and Atlanta and Florida and other places where it snowed, places where it normally doesn't snow and all that. They were talking about, oh my God, it is so cold, we are freezing. They should have canceled school and all the rest of it. Now, to add on top of that, we got to be in these frigid weather, and got a 17-year-old victim of white supremacy filled with self-hate, black self-respect annihilated, and he got a pistol trying to kill us. Whoopee for 2025. And 2 days removed from Dr. Martin Luther King's federal holiday. We didn't have to come to school. We are 2 days back from vacation in the state where he was killed and on the run. There were so many points in watching that where I was staggered. They were talking to the black mom. She said, I have 3 children. I always tell my children that I love them before they leave, you know, just always. She said, I have 3 children. 2 of my other children are in private school, and I will not be making that mistake again, sending them to public school. My goodness. Oh, this is, especially talking about all that. I don't know that you're that much safer in private school, but, you know, hey, I think Luigi Mangione, the Stanford white assassin, I think he was at private school, but whatever. They went and they talked to the young black male who was talking about, man, it was all cold. We shouldn't even been at school today, and then maybe this wouldn't happen. We could have been at home, had some vegan hot chocolate, kept our footies on, did some virtual learning, and called it a day. We didn't do that. Now we got to be outside, huddled up on the bus at the reunification center. The same young privileged black male, they asked him, he said, the reporter, he said, did you ever think anything like this would happen? It didn't take a millisecond. Did you think anything like this would happen? Oh yeah, I knew something like this was going to happen. Like, woo! Woo! When you play that, that's even one back up. Z's mommy said, Z, her daughter, asked her, man, for real, We're on a planet dominated by white supremacy, racism. Why did you produce children? Why did you have me? This is Z talking to Z's mommy. Eep. That's a question you need to have an answer really before you get to the bedroom. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Is this the best? And that's the question that I've been asking. Now, this is the best we can do. It's 2025. It's 2025. They got all kinds of wacky technology and such out there. They got AI technology. Uh-oh. I think Leroy brought a pistol into school. They got all kinds of wacky gadgets and everything else. This is the best we can do. Pack our child off, send him off to school. I kiss him goodbye. Reb might get you, so I'm going to act like this is the last time I'm going to see you. Sends you off to the white women. They might get you Ritalin. The office, they got the seclusion room, sensory deprivation room, in-school suspension. Who knows? But I'm going to put it in God's hand, hope for the best. Now, if that's the best we can do, hey, I don't even have children. But I'm saying, well, I'm not saying I'm taking it. Bay Area mom said, hey, you don't have to have the children. If you can't get a better plan, then I'm just going to send them off. And, hey, the school, it's likely. I can't even say it's a surprise. The child can't even say it's a surprise. Like, yeah, I thought something like this was happening. And did you hear what else he said? He said, a part of that response when he said, I'm not surprised because people, they bring guns in all the time. We don't have no metal detectors here. People bring in weed. 17 years old, that's on the brain damage list. We've had neuroscientists come in and write whole books where they got a whole list of things. Say, hey, if you got a teenage child that you care about and you want to see their brain be healthy and fully developed, which doesn't happen until they're in their mid-20s, things to avoid in their teens, unequivocally, tackle football, liquor, cannabis, cigarettes. It was a lengthy list, but those are some of the things, and neuroscientists went into detail about why that is. I remember we had non-white people come on the program. Dr. Wells don't know what she's talking about. Matter of fact, Dr. Wells ain't even been around no black people. Cannabis is the greatest thing in the history of the world. It helped my brain work better. I've been doing cannabis and on honor roll since I was 13 years old. I can't even say victim guarantee qualified on that because we've had doctors and neuroscientists both come on and say that is nonsense. That is total. And drug addiction specialists, trifecta, who have all said that is total nonsense. You do not want teens, and particularly teens classified as black in a system of white supremacy racism, using cannabis. Full stop. Stop being stupid. Stop being stupid. Anyway, sneaking reefer in Antioch High School. They don't even have recreational cannabis in Tennessee, so I can imagine what that looks like in the States. I think, what is about half of them now, 26 of them in the U.S., where they do have recreational cannabis? That's one. They kept rolling along. They're talking to other parents, children. They talked to Serenity. Lovely little young black female, lots of them, I guess, in a school that is 82% non-white. They get to Serenity, and they're talking to her, and they say, were you surprised this happened? She said, oh, yeah, I was stunned at that. And, hey, you did just have a shooting at the Covenant High School, so you can't be that surprised. Anyway, they were talking to little Serenity. She said, I've always been fearful that something like this going to happen. I've seen the Columbine documentaries and things, and I get scared, trench coat mafia, and I get the trembling, and then this happened to me. Like, oh, my God, I'd be traumatized forever. Yep. Little Serenity said, we were in the classroom. Our regular teacher wasn't there today. We had a substitute. The lockdown buzzer went off. The substitute didn't know the code, didn't know how to lock the door. Can I be redundant? That ignorant question I proposed as someone who doesn't even have offspring. Is this the best we can do? 2025. public school. That's the best we can do in a system of white supremacy racism. That's the best I can do. Yeah, these white heifers, I know they right tough on us. They were tough on me, man. I barely got out. Didn't even get out of school. I dropped out myself. That's not really funny. But it's the best I can do. Little Leroy. Little Keisha. It's the best I can do. Surrender. And even you had parents who talked about that. I don't want to say, they said, do you want to send your child? He said, I don't want to send my child back. But if you do homeschooling, said it's a lot with that. It's a lot of resources, and you might not have all that. And he said, then if you don't send your child to school, they got truancy. Yup. All of that should be thought about before you get to the bedroom. And yup, as a trifling, shiftless, worthless Negro with no children, all of that sounds very daunting. And then you add a little teaspoon of COVID-19 in there. Wow. I am overwhelmed just sitting here thinking about it. But, hey, be truthful. That is way more than I want to bite off. My plate is already overflowing, and I mean, what? Man, I want to drink cone liquor and go to the club. Cool and the gang. Bay Area mom, one more time. You don't have to have the children. And really, that would be an astronomical leap in counter-racism. Because us having all these children and being goofy about it and stupid and just doing the same thing. Public school and not talking to them about racism and just being really good. That's what we're reading right now, Dr. Maya Angelou, and I am so glad she said the same thing I did. It is really pitiful, and I mean out of this world, pitiful and tacky black parenting on display. Whole book. And she's in agreement with me, Dr. Angelou. Fist bump. But I mean, if that's just what we're going to continue, you really don't have to have the children. Have them be raped and assaulted by Diddy and God knows who else. Like, come on. We can do better. And if we can't, you don't have to have the children. I'm in a classroom with a substitute teacher. You can't even lock the door. I understand everybody, maybe you don't know the code and all that. That would be something beyond that substitute. That would be on the school system. I mean, dang, you can't put this on placards. You all just had a school shooting, not in this state, not in the county, in this same city. There got to be some urgency about this. Like, oh yes, somebody might get sick. We got the COVID-19, the Rona, and all the rest of it. Maybe we at least have, a flashcard. I just said we got all this technology. You can't get AI in the classroom. Oh man, we got a substitute dummy. Lock the door, dummy. Matter of fact, sit down. I got it. Sit down. Just, Jesus Christ. Substitute teachers. Chris Rock told us about them substitute teachers. Pitiful, man. But if I'm a child sitting there, I got to be looking at it like, wee. I might even come home and pull a Z. For real. Mom, Dad, so-called, I'd be salty about it too. So-called mom, Dad. Why did you have children? Matter of fact, let me get a pen so I can write this down. Use my brain computer. Talk slow. Well, that's what it's going to be for a whole lot of us. Why did you have a child that was going to be classified as black in a system of white supremacy racism, and then you're going to shovel me off to public school? Why? I'm going to close my mouth so I don't get the name calling up in here and go to my room. And I mean, for real, that would be about the size of it. Like, yep. Have to hang my head in shame. Got me out here at the public school with a substitute teacher. That ain't a metaphor for real. What's the quality of education? Schools in the U.S. So when it come down to the covenant, that's what they say, when the rubber meet the road, when it get down to the, all righty, let's see. Oh, wait a minute. Reb done broke into the school. We got, what? Lock the door. I didn't know we were going to have, I could die. Yes, literally, I could die. I know we got all that. I just said the technology. Maybe they got new electronic doors and all that. Maybe you got to do a retina scan to actually get the door locked. Maybe. If that's the case, you for sure need to have a flashcard or something. If you got a substitute teacher, man, this is how you lock the door. It's not going to recognize your eyeballs. So this, bam, or at least tell the students. You know, we got a substitute today and they're a little slow. So let's see. Lakeisha, you are smart enough. You will be in charge. Lock the door if, you know, we have something. They try to bomb the school. Man. I don't even know what to say, man. We have to get those 288 pages to see what I did. Did he mention Columbine? What were his parents doing with all this? Because they said he had contact with enforcement officials and he had problems. Like they'd seemed like they had noted there were some what they would call red flag behaviors and incidents with this young person. What were his parents doing in the midst of all this? I think the police had been called to the residence and they had taken possession of firearms because of some of his previous behaviors. So what was their involvement in all of this? Tragedy all the way around, fatalities and injury, all that. But and at a school that is 82% non-white. Thoughts and prayers, folks out in the volunteer state. Again, I got to see if Michael Scholes, see if he, you know, I know he knows about this incident, but then does he know the other aspects? Because I know he is right there, Columbine connection for sure. Anyway, the only other things I'll get in before we get to folks who dialed in. Marcus Garvey did get a pardon this week. I did not play anything about that, but Joe Biden, that was one of his kind of last second deals before he left. Leonard Peltier as well. He's kind of a cause celeb where he was in AIM, American Indian Movement in the 1960s, and was convicted of killing FBI agents up at Wounded Knee. Long disputed, very controversial. He's maintained his innocence for years. Biden did not pardon him. He commuted his sentence, which I thought was really tacky. If 1,500 approximately mostly white terrorists can be pardoned and out chilling. Rachel Powell can be out chilling. Leonard Peltier has been in prison for about a half century. Like, even if we think he did do this, which he and many others contest and have contested for decades, he served a half century. He's an octogenarian. I don't think he's much of a threat at this point. Why not let bygones be bygones? They even had Speaker Johnson came out and said, in America, so-called, we believe in redemption and second chances. Well, why can't that be the case for Mr. Peltier? He served like 50 years or so. He's 80. Go fishing, man. Go chill and just call it house arrest. I know you want to impress me with the pardons and such of people that are deceased as opposed to pardoning Marcus Garvey. Pardon Nat Turner. I'll give you the golf clap. Anyway, my man, one thing I will say, Enrique. I said Biden should have pardoned Enrique Tarrio before I leave. He could have stole some of Trump's thunder, and he didn't do that. He didn't listen to me. Trump just went in and pardoned everybody. My man Enrique walked out of that prison like Shawshank Redemption. Enrique is another racial. I don't even think he's racially ambiguous. Clearly non-white person, but he got hit with like the heaviest sentence from the January 6th folks. He got like 22 years. He wasn't even there. He wasn't even there and got hit with a 22-year sentence. But he got a full pardon, walked out like Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption with a black MAGA hat. Told him, I played the clip, told him, he said, hey, man, ain't nothing X about my Proud Boy membership except the explicit vengeance that is forthcoming. Brother Reek. Like, man, Enrique, he needs to have a full autobiography. Enrique, if you can get an autobiography done, Catherine Massey Book Club immediately. Like, as soon as we have an open slot, when it's published, Enrique Tarrio, coming to the cows. Let's read the Enrique story. I cannot wait. Rachel Powell got it, but says she getting a horse. Rachel Powell is the white woman who had the ice axe in Pennsylvania. Matter of fact, Rachel Powell is the white woman in Sandy Lake, Pennsylvania. Sandy Lake, Pennsylvania has approximately 750 people. 96% white. How many black people? It said 0% Negro in Sandy Lake, Pennsylvania. They will be rooting for Jalen Hurts. Saquon Barkley, get that thing, man. Get the Eagles. Woo, woo, woo. Now, I don't know. This might be Steeler territory, but I mean, hey, they didn't get that far. So I think the Eagles might have to rep for the whole of Pennsylvania tomorrow. If these folks, Rachel Powell and them, they're going to celebrate, we're going to do it up, watch a little brain damage, and cheer on the Eagles, ain't nary a Saquon Barkley looking fella nowhere near Sandy Lake, Pennsylvania, 96% white, 0% Saquon Barkley. But Rachel Powell, she was the one that had that ice axe down there. They said they had the battering ram. Heave, ho, they got the video of all of that. All of that. I even said the ice axe. That's what. Imagine a Negro with an ice axe. I'm mad because I think they done cheated Obama out the election, and we're going to go to the Capitol with my ice axe, and we're going to get at these senators and folks who done messed over Obeezy, and then Obeezy get in office, and he going to pardon me. Oh, Gus, he didn't mean no trouble with that ice axe. We're going to let him out. Matter of fact, he been held hostage all this time. And restore your gun rights. Pardon that, Turner. And they used my tacky phrase. I saw it all this week. They said, oh, my Lord, now that Trump done pardoned all 1,500 of these terrorists and insurrectionists, oh, man, the extremists, they going to be more emboldened than did. Now, for real. At this, again, where is the cutoff point? Like, is there a max level of emboldenedness? Where does, at some point it had to be, all right, we are maxed out. We just do whatever we want, and, it ain't no more emboldened to be. We here. We just going to do whatever we want. But at least they did tell us this week that the emboldenedness of the white folk has increased. Let's see. We will get to it. The number again, 605-313-5164. The code 564943 pound. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. I have to say something about New Orleans because that is when we've done signature work. Like, I'm so proud of the work we've done on Katrina and New Orleans in general over all these years, going all the way back to 2009. They said they are fitting to boot the niggers in New Orleans. They didn't say niggers, but they said people that are unhoused and all that. And then they showed a picture of a privileged black male who's unhoused. Potential looter. But they said they're going to pack them up and put them in a warehouse because it would be unsightly to have these unhoused Negroes around the French Quarter for the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley don't want to see all that if they make it. All due respect to the Redskins. I will never call them the Commanders. All due respect, maybe Jaden Daniels, them. They don't want to see that either. They get to New Orleans. What? What? And then the amount of money to put me in a warehouse that's cold and don't even have no food. And y'all couldn't put that money. Matter of fact, wait a minute. If the Super Bowl and all that brain damage was not going to come to New Orleans, would you all have had this money to get us some sort of housing and getting me up off the street so I don't have to be out here in the French Quarter begging for nickels and dodging trucks trying to run us over? Come on. Matter of fact, some of these folks who are unhoused, like, no giggling, they may very well be victims from Katrina, we still ain't got right from that. That is for sure one. I do hope you got your dips and chips, liquor. Dry January is forgotten. We ready to do it up. Got my shots of tequila. We going to do the beer pong. Remember, now, oh man, regardless of what happened with this game, oh dang. Just like with the Olympics, they gave the niggers the boot. They get on up out of here, Leroy. Beat it. You know who's most likely to be unhoused? Beat it, Leroy. Get on out. I just want to watch the game. Man. Can I watch it? Beat it, Leroy. They promise you a sandwich. You get in there and they have maybe a sardine. You don't even have a can of sardines. One, they treat you like Andre Bloom. You get one sardine. Not the whole can, greedy nigger. You get one sardine. Not like you were eating lobster po' boys when you were out on the streets. So shut up and take your one sardine and go to the quiet part of the warehouse. They put you in a warehouse. In Gentilly. White people, man, keep that in mind. We get to just keep that in mind. In fact, you can talk about that when they have commercials and lulls in the game. They show Taylor Swift if the Chiefs make. Say, you know how many niggers they booted out of New Orleans for the game? What? And they'll treat you like me and move away. Like, I don't want to try this. I'm going to go ahead and he bringing up and moving niggers, and we trying to focus on the game here. I got my beer, and then he talking crazy. Let's see, folks who dialed in have commentary to share. Imagine Irie in New Orleans, they done booted her because they said they said out of state, man. They didn't even say they moved you to Baton Rouge. They said out of state. Imagine Irie dialed in for the program, and well, it's not Irie in Cancer Alley no more. I'm dialing in now and calling you from Idaho. Like, what do you mean in Idaho? Wait a minute. What do you mean out of state? Where are we going out of state? Texas? Are we going close out of state? Florida? Mississippi? Idaho? Alaska? Where are we going out of state? Just like the looters from yesteryear. Seems like they don't never have nothing good to say about black people in New Orleans. Never. It's always dislocation. Let's see. Folks who dialed in with a hand up. Line should be open. Proceed.
Evening, everyone. Have you heard?
Heard both of you. We'll get our female caller first. Lauren, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And I'll try not to talk for too long. I'm over here feeling a bit jealous of Mrs. Powell's daughter, the one who's going to get a pony since she's out of the penitentiary now, or maybe it was just jail. I'm not sure. So the New Orleans thing, that's like one of the first things I took notes from. They said it was going to, maybe I misheard it, but when they were talking about how much it was going to cost, did they say 11 billion with a B at least, and maybe 16 billion with a B, or did they say million?
I thought they said billion with a B. Billion.
Okay, that's what I wrote down, but it seems like such a large number. I mean, for that amount of money, and it's only supposed to be for 2 or 3 months, that's enough to get all of those people long-term housing, in my view. It doesn't have to be fancy, but hey, you can get a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, and I'd say for the next 2 or 3 years, if you're going to be spending $11 billion, don't put them in a warehouse. Get an apartment for them. That would probably be better. Then they can get a job and improve their lives somehow. When they were talking about Ahmaud Arbery, I think it was his father, okay? And he was talking about the lady, the prosecutor. And he said to get in this powerful spot like that and didn't do their job. He was talking about the elected officials. He said to get in a powerful spot like that and didn't do their job, it's hurtful. You know, I think maybe it should be considered that white woman did do her job. But we just, you know, non-white black people collectively don't understand that she has a different goal objective. And it's not justice. Her job is to support racism, white supremacy. And I also noted that he said bringing light to his case was not enough. He wants better systems, better outcomes. He said systems that failed on that day, and I don't know which systems he's talking about. And he said, I call it a cabal. And BGQ, you can call it a cabal, but I think it's accurate to call it the system of racism, white supremacy. I also noted that the white killers, they were called vigilantes instead of just racist murderers. Even racist, that would do it. The Kentucky part where they had those flyers, they said they were hateful flyers. They didn't call them racist flyers. And they were spread on MLK Day. This was in Clifton, Kentucky, I think. And so there was a voicemail message, and it sounded like a white man. Well, I assumed it was a white man since it was the KKK or whatnot. And it said, in January, the world's going to change for a lot of people, especially immigrants, but nothing is going to change for the KKK. Well, and the only charges, they don't know, they're not putting any charges on anyone, but if they did, it was going to be like littering and something else that seemed very minor. I don't remember what that was, but nothing serious, littering. Let me see. Oh, I did have something about Miss Rachel Powell. Again, I'm thinking about that course. Stuart Rhodes. He was another one. He was a white man. I think he's with the Oath Keepers. He got a pretty high sentence. And he was in D.C. after he was released. And, I mean, I think I heard it correctly. I think it said he was hanging out at Dunkin' Donuts and meeting with lawmakers. That's the first time I heard the meeting with lawmakers part, and that is pretty interesting. The shooting at Antioch High School in Tennessee, one of the students there, she sounded like a black child. But she said the students were being loud and not taking it serious. That made me think about Mr. Fuller, just being serious about silly things, silly about serious things. But she said, you really can't trust no one for real. I'm scared. She also said, I really don't know. And I think this child was just being honest. Like what she said, and what the male child said, the one whose mom said, somebody's kid is not coming home today, and I just can't imagine that. When she said that, I was, maybe she was just being, people say things and they don't really mean what they're saying. But if you have a child who is in school at this point and you haven't thought about a school shooting, it's kind of ridiculous because they're happening a lot. So at the very least, you should have imagined, what will you do if you're in that situation? Let me see. And I also noted the majority, minority people, not just white people, everybody in the system of racism, white people and non-white people, they really don't like to specify who they're talking about. I don't like to say I'm talking about white people or non-white people. I think it just it increases confusion, and it will be better to just say exactly what it is that we're talking about. I saw a picture of some Proud Boys gathering in D.C. This was over the last week. And I think it was on Inauguration Day or maybe like right before or around the pardon times. But anyway, it was some Proud Boys, and they had on lots of yellow and black. And I noticed they have the word uhuru on their Proud Boys clothing. I saw it on a T-shirt, and I also saw it on a scarf, and that's a Swahili word. I think it's supposed to mean like independence or freedom, and I thought it was just really interesting for just a racist white supremacist group to co-opt that Swahili word. And that's all I have for right now. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Seems like race soldiers will co-opt any and everything. They were quoting Donald Trump, and then were quoting Dr. King on Monday, on the holiday, and then he's going to go in and get rid of all these Negro woke policies and all the rest of it. Anywho, I thought that was important as well. And again, all of the children and parents that we heard in the Antioch High School shooting were classified as black, all, even though it's 82%. But little Serenity, who was talking, black female, who said that when the shooting happened, that the other students were laughing and joking, not taking it serious. Two very important points she said that I said that right there is very representative of us in general and our predicament on the whole right now. Go to school, we have a substitute teacher, we have a school shooting, the substitute does not know how to lock the door. Go to school, we have a shooting at a school that's 82% non-white people. During a school shooting, the students are not taking it seriously. They're joking around, probably on social media. When you play around with sex, the joke is on the offspring. And she did not sound like she was having fun at all. In fact, she said, this is exactly what I feared, and it happened. And with the name, what's her name again? Her name is Serenity. Octavius in New York, thank you for your patience, sir.
Greetings, Gus, callers and listeners. First off, the tech segment with Rebecca Lewis, again, a Stanford mention. I think it's extremely important to understand that dynamic, and Biden I guess Biden kind of gave some light to it, but there's so much going on with Elon Musk and with Peter Thiel and all these other groups of tech and industry giants, so to speak, that are really moving the needle and pushing things towards trying to create almost the same situation. They're trying to reverse things back to, slavery times. And they've literally said this. That's kind of a part of their philosophies. There are a lot of authors that are writing about this and putting a lot of work into this. I would suggest even people just looking into it a little bit. The other segment in regards to the FBI and CIA and extremism within them, I don't think they can afford to even investigate themselves, because if they do, it would lead to serious issues and accusations across the board, and it would probably lead to them dismantling their own organizations. They won't be able to stand, because at the end of the day, those organizations still support white supremacy. They're just unhappy with the way that other groups or other parts of the organization are going about pushing the system. That's really all it is. The Enrique Tarrio was interesting. That him being released, and I really thought about his section, and I looked up some information on him, but I ended up finding a book by an author named Paula Ramos, and the book is called Defectors. In this book, the full title is Defectors: The Rise of the Latino Far Right, What It Means for America. And I listened to a quick interview before, purchasing the book. I just wanted to know a little bit about the author, and she stated she interviewed him, which I thought was great, because she didn't know if he was going to be obviously arrested. So she interviewed him and found out that he was brought up in Cuba. He was Cuban, but he was classified as a darker-skinned Cuban, but his ideologies were more right-wing. So when he hung around other Cubans that were closer to his complexion, the ideologies didn't match. So then when he went to the other Cubans that would be classified as white Cubans, they didn't accept him because of his skin complexion. So he ended up veering off into the Proud Boys. I mean, I'm sure the book gives more detail. I just purchased it because I'm curious about the significant rise in so-called Latino votes for the right wing and right-wing extremism growing in the so-called Latino group. So I did purchase the book, but that contributes tremendously to the direction that he was going. And I found it so interesting, almost basically confusion on his side, hands down. And she also stated that what ended up happening with him as the Proud Boys became more well-known, they couldn't have him as the face. So they didn't want him to be the leader anymore because it was bad for appearances, so to speak, from the other members. But I don't know how that's panning out now. Apparently, from that interview, we'll see and hear more about if he is still a leader. But that's some information on that. The book, again, is called Defectors, The Rise of the Latino Far Right and What It Means for America, Paula Ramos. Another thing I wanted to just mention was I was actually doing a book, an interview of an author. His name is Dr. Clarence Taylor. The book he published was Historic Black Brooklyn, 400 Years of Struggle and Hope. I think I spoke to you about this a while back. I was supposed to do this interview for Black History Month for the company I currently work for. And they contacted me just this Thursday and said they can't do it anymore. And I asked why, and they gave me some really, let's just say, nonsense excuses. They were not believable. And that's when it dawned on me, and my significant other, she told me, she said, well, they're rolling back DEI in almost every area. So it seems plausible that they're scared to actually do your event, even though it is Black History Month, which I thought she's absolutely right. So now I have to call back this professor, and the book is excellent, might I add. And one of the things in the book that the author wrote, Dr. Taylor, he stated that the reason for the huge insurgence of people that were working hard and very intelligent during that time frame as Brooklyn and New York City was growing, and people classified as Black were starting to put themselves in better position, was because there was an urge to read. There was a huge desire to read, and it was a push that was notable within the state and the city. Just to put that one out there. But again, I have to cancel this whole entire event, call the author up and tell them I unfortunately can't do it. Just in kind of like a casualty of all the changes that are transpiring now within this so-called country. That said, I will mute my line. Thank you.
Wow. It does not get any better than tacky. And I agree with your caremate, attempted partner, her assessment that, yeah, with all the changes and the new administration, have us being accused of being woke and all the rest of no sirree buddy. And in fact, even prior to Trump coming to office the second time around, I've heard this sort of thing before, where it'll be some sort of event for Black History Month or something related to racism, white supremacy, even like indirectly, even if they're not going to use that language, they're going to say like implicit bias or, whatever, social justice, whatever, that they'll schedule it and say they're going to do it. And then it'll be maybe a week or so before it's supposed to happen. And they're like, wait a minute. We got to speak to HR, make sure we covered all our legal bases and don't have any issues, boom, boom, boom. And they go and talk to people. And sometimes that'll just be it. They never even come back and follow up and, we're going to do it a different day and reschedule it. And we'll let you know. And they let you know. They never let you know, and it just never happens. I've seen that before, where they come and give you some lame excuse as to why they can't do it or whatever. But certainly now, oh yeah, we got our dude back, and we not on all this woke stuff. And what are you talking about? No, yeah, we don't talk. That's Negro and radical. We're not doing all that. Anywho, reading is more important than watching television. Amen. Amen. And current books, there are so many things. Just January 6th alone, I have been saying, hey, we're in a new year, so you know what that means. Gus T. say, every victim of white supremacy, racism in the known universe, there should be one non-fiction book published in the current calendar year. Just flipped the calendar, 2025. That means all of us should have one non-fiction book published in 2025 that we are going to read for that calendar year. That way we're reading current things. We can pay attention to terminology. Wow, they use that term majority, minority in this book too. That sort of thing. All of us, there you go. And hey, there are already books that have been published for 2025 that are about racism that maybe that one should be on the list for this calendar year. Mo reading. Cuba is a whole fascinating study in and of itself about racism, white supremacy, and Mr. Tarrio. That's even interesting to hear that they were concerned about having him be using some racial showcasing, if you say, with Mr. Tarrio, if I say for racial showcasing, because that would be the best way to deflect accusations that we are about racism or anything of the sort. Hey, Enrique, what do you mean? He is that now. Enrique does have a white parent, so I mean, you can only go so far. Now, I mean, even that. Now that says something. Enrique can't be the front person. Why? Well, he's a little dark, but he got a white parent. Dang. He said the folks down in Cuba where they do the Espanol. And I've heard so many people say, man, Castro and them, they ain't about no racism. Dr. Maya Angelou said that in her memoir. They ain't about no racism in Cuba. They don't even have white folks. Really? Why is Enrique having all this difficulty then? Whole thing. Confused. Matter of fact, what he said with Enrique, it sounds just like Mr. Henderson down in Antioch. It sounds exactly the same, except I don't think Mr. Henderson has a white parent. Let's see. Other folks who dialed in with a hand up. If we missed you totally, you have commentary, proceed.
Gus, Victor from New Jersey. I came in kind of late, but you was talking about the Proud Boys and other white supremacists. I would call them paramilitary groups. But you know what I don't really hear no connection to is like the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, because when I first came to know about these groups was the Ferguson protest. Because remember, I want to say it was the Oath Keepers. They were working hand in hand with Ferguson police. You know, I remember vividly seeing these guys in paramilitary uniforms, and they're standing on rooftops, and they were working with Ferguson. And then just to think that a lot of protesters, black males, were mysteriously murdered during that time. That you had these paramilitary, these white supremacist groups working with law enforcement, and I don't really see people going into depth about and seeing if there could be some kind of correlation between those deaths and those white supremacist groups that was working down in Ferguson. The young black male that shot the school up, and his manifesto, and I'm no fan of Candace Owens, victim of white supremacy, but she made a very interesting point where she called out the sloppy journalism when they read out this black male's manifesto, and it was a copy and paste piece, and she linked it to another mass shooting, for verbatim, word for word. So it was basically copy and paste, you know. So again, I don't really know what's the deal or why are they trying to. Well, Candace Owens has been controversial in her critique of the Israel-Palestine conflict, but to want to tie her in to radicalizing this black male and to not only hate black people but hate Jews, you know, it just seems kind of suspect. You know, so, and I'm not, because all this can be conspiracy theory, Gus and listeners, but you know, some of these shootings, it's real, it's getting suspect, you know. And from my understanding, if I heard the report, this black male, like other mass shooters, they were in contact with other people. You know what I'm saying? So who's behind the scenes, you know, coaching these shooters? If that is the case, you know, I mean, there is something called, you know, the dark web. I mean, maybe there's some correspondence going on in the dark web, but you know, but nobody. They just want to kind of like classify these shootings as lone wolf shootings, and I just think there's something else going on with this. VGQ Al Sharpton is protesting Target from them getting rid of DEI. I really don't think it's going to be successful. I mean, I don't really see nothing really constructive coming out of it. This isn't the 1960s anymore when you have a independent bus company. I mean, these are multinational corporations that's linked in with other, other businesses. So, you know, I just don't really see the constructive effect that's going to have. There are some people, and I mean, they're saying that, you know, as it relates to black people, DEI really didn't benefit black people collectively. You know, just like with minority, you know, a lot of diversity can be white women, it can be LGBT, it can be Hispanic, it can be all the above. So, you know, them going after DEI, I'm not really too fearful, not too upset about it. In fact, it's to be expected. And even when I'm just kind of talking to relatives and friends, and we talk about, you know, they're talking about the looming threat of Trump. You know, my argument with this is, with them, I said, listen, okay, you could have voted. I mean, you know, if the people would have, the large amount of people who didn't vote, if they would have voted and they would have voted the Democrats in, but I've yet to see the Democratic Party putting up any resistance to some of this propaganda that's coming by way of the Republicans. I've yet to see the Democratic Party say anything about Ed Bloom, this lawyer who's went on a crusade of trying to basically shoot down anything that's race-based, that's pertaining to any programs that's benefiting black people. So, you know, until that happens, you know, I don't really see what was going to stop a Republican or a figure like Donald Trump or a Elon Musk type from coming into office and doing what they're doing. There's little to no resistance. Here it is, they're putting bans on TikTok. I want to say for being influenced by China and spreading misinformation. I've yet to see a ban on CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC. So, you know, I'm just saying this to say both parties are white supremacists. Both parties support basically the subjugation and the just holding down black people, in my opinion. I'll close.
Much obliged, victim in New Jersey. Before we grab retired firefighter in Florida, other folks, in terms of shooters, so-called lone wolves, them talking to someone or being influenced or in correspondence, perhaps, that was raised strongly with Peyton Gendron in Buffalo. That is later this year, federal trial. All of that should come out. That's the whole point of going for the trial. That's why I went the first time around. But them saying that he was talking to somebody online, that somebody might have had connection to law enforcement, that has come up a number of times in some of the more recent mass shooter type events. So we'll keep that in mind for Buffalo, and even with this incident, to see, you know, did he have correspondence with someone else? And they'll even say frequently with the school shootings that they do have correspondence with folks. They share, they kind of let people know that they have this, that they've been thinking about doing this in advance. So absolutely could have been online, some of these chat rooms and that sort of thing. Very, very common. Let's see. Other folks that we missed. Retired firefighter in Florida. Did you have commentary, sir?
Yes, sir. I'm going to be as brief as possible. Greetings, everyone. The first account I liked about writing, and I think it's very important, although it's becoming obsolete. I'm reminded of Mr. Fuller. Has a very good handwriting skills. It's almost like an art on how he writes. Your handwriting, to me, becomes a personalized way of communicating with others. Your writing makes you unique. I have some young fellas that I coached. The last time I coached was back in 2016, 2017. And when I be looking at my email, I see some of the things that they are even texting, and I can't understand none of it at all, let alone talking about something they may write. And they are teachers. They're actually teachers and coaches. The report, I'm not surprised, the report about the Super Bowl, and I have down it will cost billions to detain hundreds of males, females, and children, of something that would last only about maybe 3 or 4 hours when it comes down to it. The wildfires in LA is dangerous because of the swirling winds, ability to transport the flame and embers very fast with a lot of fuel to keep the fire alive and to move very fast. I read in one area only 0.6% of the population is non-white black. The property in those areas is very expensive. Last but not least, I'm aware of the book club reading on Dr. Maya Angelou. Recently, I was hearing Dr. Carlos Moore, and I'm a part of a group that had a relationship with him when he was a instructor at FIU. He organized a negritude, quote unquote, negritude conference on the campus. And for months, a couple of years, we actually assisted him by escorting him back and forth from his home to school because it was quite very dangerous for him. He was known to speak on racism on a global basis, and especially a book that he wrote about racism in Cuba. He was born in Cuba, but his parents are both from Jamaica. And I used to drive him back and forth to his home to make sure he got home safely. And that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening.
Much obliged. Retired firefighter in Florida. Yes. Dr. Moore mentioned in the book club, the section this past week we had about the whole melee at the UN facility in New York. Was talked about right there, and all the so-called Caribbean black people melding in, participating in what we call it counter-racist activities in New York at that time. Absolutely. That is wacky. He's right there down in Florida the whole time doing security. Wow. Wacky. More reading for everyone. More reading. Retired firefighter, he mentioned the fires in California and those winds, the Santa Ana winds, as they are called. They're so dangerous, and they take those embers and can transport them really, really fast, and it never rains, so it's really, really dry, and, you know, that's how it's been spreading all these fires so quickly the past few weeks or so. Just this past couple days in LA, they had a whole new set of fires kick off. Same thing, they had really intense winds, really, really dry. They had to shut down a part of the 405 freeway in LA because the fire was getting really close to the road. Like, oh man, they shut it down. It was stopping traffic, and you couldn't go down unless you lived on that street and were trying to evacuate and all this. And I was just like, why? And the 405 is really, it's a freeway. It's really important. Like, man, when I talked about the time and energy cost of living in Los Angeles, anywhere you are, you're in a major city, they have to shut the freeway down because of wildfire threat. That's the cost, time and energy cost of living in Los Angeles. Now, not to mention, in that segment, when they talked about people who their house didn't burn down, it survived, thankfully, and they had done things like when they know in this area that it's seasonal to have those really high winds, and if it's really dry, really easy for one of those embers to pop on your property. So you want to clear brush and things that might be easy to combust and cause you to lose your whole property, close the vents, and all these other things, precautions that you can take. They said that for people in the LA area, even who did all of that and saved their house property, even still, you go inside, layer of ash. It's really toxic. I don't even know how to clean all this. When fella said he went and got his white milk, and he sat it on the counter for a moment, and he turned around and came back, a gray layer. You are breathing that all day long. That's also in the cost of living in Los Angeles. And that would have been the case even before the fire. And now you add all that. Yeah, you don't even know what's in all that. Asbestos, lead, who knows? And I told you what Fuller dropped a gem. Now, he dropped a number of jewels, but I mean, that is one I don't think gets appreciated enough. Or maybe as the planet warms and everything, maybe we will have a greater appreciation for it. But Man, what is better than breathing? The other one he dropped, fuller in terms of pithy statements that say a lot about non-white people. I'm going to get me some stuff tonight. Black culture. Man, I got to use reading Dr. Maya Angelou's memoir. Oh, yeah. It's affirmed on every page. And again, stuff. That might mean I'm going to get me a little bit to puff, puff, pass. Stuff might mean sexual activity. Stuff might mean I'm going upside the head of a non-white person who looks at me tough, or a combination of all three. But I'm going to get me some stuff tonight. That is Negro culture, through and through. Did we miss any folks? Anybody? Commentary they need to get in before we wrap up? Grand. Everybody satisfied. More reading more important than watching television. We will be here on Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. White guests only. And right on time for everything transpiring in the world. I will say, I think a victim in New Jersey, he was telling us about talking to some of his attempted family and folks that he concerned about, so-called friends, non-white people, about the new presidency. And man, Trump threat is looming. He's going to get us, DEI and all that. For sure, the people who've benefited most from DEI are classified as white. I said Jane Elliott and them getting all them honorariums and checks to go out and talk foolishness. But I remember way back we had Andrew, other part of the world, he said, Trump in the White House, I have a much easier time talking to non-white people about racism. He said, all I have to do is when he doesn't even live on this continent. He lives in a whole different hemisphere. He said, I have a much easier time when I talk to non-white people, when they want to push back. Ain't no racism. You just lame, shiftless, lazy black person making excuses. And he said, all I do is just point over there. You see who's president over in the White House? And they calm all that and, well, yeah, well, all right, Leroy. All right. I guess there is a teaspoon of racism. Okay. Right on. The threat is always there under a system of white supremacy racism. I mean, hey, maybe it is better to have Trump there so that we can be truthful about what we're facing, as opposed to think, oh man, thank goodness because not all white people is racist. So thank goodness we got old Joe Biden or whoever they think, would have been better. Or maybe they think, hey, thanks goodness we got old Obama, or thank goodness we got Kamala Harris. So they put a non-white person in and things will be good. Like, now, come on. Memory shouldn't be that bad from the Obama years for us. Any hoodles. We will be here on Tuesday. Book Club, Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. We are kind of going towards the home stretch. I think we should have like maybe 3-4 sessions left, but we're getting close to wrapping it up with Dr. Maya Angelou's The Heart of a Woman. Fascinating read, so much to learn. Anywho, much obliged for folks tuning in. Hope it was worthy of your Saturday evening. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. Preserve your brain computer. They said the children at Antioch High School sneaking firearms and reefer into the high school. Neither one good for your brain computer. Model that for the young people. How about that? Sobriety. If we don't have a refrigerator full of malt liquor and St. Ides, water, yerba mate tea, fresh brewed. Creator, we ask that you help us remain patient with other black people, victims of white supremacy, we ask that you help us remain patient with ourselves. Remind us to demonstrate the highest levels of black self-respect at all times, in all places, each and every time we are in contact with another black person. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. No name calling, no gossiping, no throwaway offspring to be dumped in a public school, bombed and shot at, and the substitute teacher can't even lock the door. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in.
Nigga, you so brainwashed.
I'm a victim, brother.
Problem. You're a victim.
Man, I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning.
Shut up.
The man has programmed my condition. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.